The streets of New York, in the late 1970s, had a rhythm of their own, a pulse that beat with ambition, danger, and an unspoken code of loyalty. It was a city that never truly slept, but its underworld moved in a shadowy tempo, orchestrated by figures whose names inspired fear and respect in equal measure. Among these men, few wielded influence as quietly, yet as powerfully, as Aniello Dellacroce. Known to many simply as Neil, Dellacroce was not the loud, flamboyant figure often imagined when one thinks of organized crime. He did not crave headlines, nor did he indulge in public displays of power. Instead, his authority was built on discretion, loyalty, and an uncanny ability to understand human nature in the underworld. Born into a world already steeped in the traditions of Italian-American life and crime, Dellacroce grew up in the shadows of New York streets. He learned early that power was not always about violence, it was about influence, patience, and the quiet accumulation of respect. In the late 1970s, as the Gambino crime family solidified its control over New York, Dellacroce stood at the epicenter of operations that spanned the city and extended beyond it. While the public's imagination often fixated on the flamboyant personalities of mafia bosses, Dellacroce operated like a silent conductor, ensuring that the family's orchestra of crime played in perfect harmony. His office was not a lavish suite but a modest space that reflected his philosophy: efficiency and utility over ostentation. Visitors to his presence often noted the sharp contrast between his modest surroundings and the gravity of the decisions made within those walls. Here, alliances were forged, disputes were settled, and strategies for expansion were meticulously planned. Dellacroce understood that perception was as critical as action. By remaining unobtrusive, he wielded power without the trappings that often made men vulnerable to attention from law enforcement or rival factions. The world he navigated was not solely one of violence and intimidation. The Gambino family's operations, in the late 1970s, extended into legitimate enterprises, including construction, waste management, and unions, which provided both revenue and a veil of legality. Dellacroce's role often required him to balance these dual realities, ensuring the smooth operation of legitimate businesses while overseeing the more clandestine activities that defined the family's dominance. This balancing act required strategic thinking, diplomacy, and, at times, ruthless decisiveness. Every decision carried weight. A misstep could provoke violent retaliation or invite scrutiny from law enforcement, which had become increasingly vigilant against organized crime. Despite his quiet demeanor, Dellacroce commanded unwavering loyalty from those around him. Soldiers and capos alike respected him not only for his intelligence but for his fairness. He understood the human element of leadership, recognizing that power without loyalty was ephemeral. His ability to read people, to anticipate reactions and motivations, set him apart from others in the underworld. He was a man who listened more than he spoke, whose silence often carried more authority than words ever could. The streets themselves seemed to acknowledge his presence. Stories circulated among those who lived in the shadows about his calm decisiveness and the certainty with which he executed plans. Rival gangsters learned quickly that while Dellacroce might not be the most visible figure in the Gambino family, crossing him or his associates was perilous. His reputation was built not on spectacle but on results, a record of achieving objectives, maintaining order, and ensuring the family's interests were always protected. In many ways, Dellacroce embodied a paradox. He was both a man of tradition and a strategist for modern crime. He upheld the old codes of respect, loyalty, and honor among criminals. Yet he was keenly aware that the world was changing. The expansion of law enforcement techniques, the rise of new criminal competitors, and the increasing public scrutiny of organized crime required adaptability. Dellacroce's genius lay in his ability to navigate these complexities, without losing the essence of what had made the Gambino family powerful in the first place: cohesion, loyalty, and fear tempered by respect. His influence extended to mentoring younger members of the family, ensuring that the next generation understood the delicate balance of power. Among those he guided were figures who would later rise to prominence within the Gambino hierarchy. Dellacroce taught them that true strength was often invisible, manifested in strategy, subtlety, and the quiet assertion of authority, rather than overt displays of dominance. He believed that a wise man's power was measured not in the enemies he defeated but in the loyalty he inspired. Even in moments of crisis, Dellacroce remained a pillar of stability. The late 1970s were not without tension. Rival families, internal disputes, and external pressures constantly threatened to disrupt the fragile equilibrium. Yet time and again, Dellacroce's interventions preserved order. His approach combined negotiation, psychological insight, and, when necessary, calculated displays of force. Those who underestimated him quickly learned that beneath his composed exterior lay a mind capable of intricate planning and decisive action. Beyond the calculations of power, there was an almost philosophical understanding of the criminal life that Dellacroce possessed. He recognized the fleeting nature of fame, the dangers of hubris, and the importance of patience. These principles guided his decisions and interactions, earning him respect that transcended fear. While some in the underworld sought notoriety, Dellacroce sought sustainability, ensuring that the Gambino family's influence endured, not just for a moment, but for generations. The legacy of Aniello Dellacroce in the late 1970s was not written in newspapers or sensational headlines. It was etched into the very fabric of the Gambino crime family. Through quiet power, unwavering loyalty, and strategic brilliance, he became a central figure in one of the most influential organized crime families in American history. To understand Dellacroce is to understand the subtle mechanics of power. The way respect is earned quietly, influence is exercised subtly, and history is shaped not only by those who seek the spotlight, but by those who master the shadows. As the city continued its restless rhythm, Dellacroce moved through it with an almost invisible authority. His story was not one of spectacle, but of substance, an enduring testament to the quiet power that could command empires, shape destinies, and leave an indelible mark on the history of organized crime in New York City. And while the world outside may never fully appreciate the scope of his influence, those within the Gambino family knew that the true strength of their empire rested not on the loud, but on the measured, the observant, and the unwavering. The city's underworld in the late 1970s thrived on networks invisible to most of its inhabitants. Deals were struck in back rooms, on street corners, and in dimly lit diners, where the casual observer might see only ordinary business, unaware of the weight of power exchanging hands. Aniello Dellacroce moved through this world like a shadow with purpose, his mind a meticulous ledger, balancing risk, loyalty, and opportunity. While many in organized crime relied on intimidation or spectacle to assert dominance, Dellacroce's authority was quiet, yet absolute. He did not need to announce his presence. It was felt in every decision, every subtle glance, every whisper of strategy among the Gambino ranks. During this time, the Gambino family faced both internal and external pressures. The family was one of the most powerful crime organizations in New York, yet it was not immune to internal strife or challenges from rival families eager to carve out territory. Dellacroce's role was often that of mediator and strategist, navigating disputes that could erupt into open conflict if mismanaged. Soldiers, capos, and associates turned to him for guidance, knowing that his counsel was grounded in a blend of streetwise intuition and rigorous understanding of human behavior. He had an uncanny ability to anticipate outcomes, reading situations as one might read a chessboard, predicting moves and countermoves before they even materialized. Dellacroce's influence extended far beyond simple enforcement of the family's will. He was intimately involved in the management of unions, construction contracts, and the city's more clandestine rackets. The ability to intertwine legitimate enterprises with illicit operations was a hallmark of the Gambino family, and Dellacroce's careful stewardship ensured these ventures remained profitable and largely undetected by authorities. In meetings, he spoke sparingly, listening more than directing. Yet his words carried weight because they were informed by years of experience and a deep understanding of the nuances of power. He demanded loyalty, yes, but he also earned it through fairness and consistency. In those years, New York City itself was a stage for the unrelenting pressures of crime, politics, and law enforcement. Streets were rife with tension, and rival families were constantly probing for weaknesses. Dellacroce understood that brute force alone could not sustain an empire. Intelligence, patience, and subtlety were essential. He orchestrated operations with careful consideration, ensuring that the family's reach extended effectively while minimizing unnecessary exposure. Every move was calculated, every interaction measured. The quiet power he wielded became a stabilizing force, not only within the family, but also in the complex web of alliances and rivalries that defined organized crime. One of Dellacroce's greatest strengths lay in his understanding of loyalty. He knew that fear could compel obedience temporarily, but true power required enduring allegiance. Soldiers who worked under him knew that he valued competence and respect as much as loyalty to the family. He observed closely, recognized talent, and ensured that those who contributed meaningfully were rewarded not with flash or attention, but with opportunity, guidance, and trust. This approach created a network of devoted allies whose loyalty was rooted in genuine respect rather than coercion. The quiet authority of Dellacroce also extended to his dealings with law enforcement. Unlike some of his contemporaries who attracted attention with reckless behavior or public displays of power, Dellacroce mastered the art of invisibility. Investigators might be aware of the Gambino family's operations, but Dellacroce himself remained largely in the shadows. He conducted his business with discretion, relying on intermediaries, coded communications, and carefully maintained networks to ensure that his actions remained largely unseen. This discretion was not simply a matter of personal preference. It was a strategic necessity in an era when law enforcement was increasingly sophisticated, and federal authorities were making organized crime a primary target. Despite the constant threat of surveillance and betrayal, Dellacroce maintained a personal code rooted in loyalty and respect. He recognized that his power depended not only on operational success, but on his reputation as a fair, strategic, and principled leader within the underworld. Associates trusted him not merely because of fear, but because of his consistent judgment, his unwavering adherence to principles, and his deep understanding of the balance between power and restraint. Even those outside the family, including rival gangsters and union leaders, understood that Dellacroce's influence could not be easily challenged without significant consequence. While the public often imagined Mafia life as a continuous parade of violence, Dellacroce's approach demonstrated that true influence was far more sophisticated. Decisions regarding territory, contracts, and alliances were carefully considered, with an awareness of long-term implications. His ability to maintain equilibrium within the family, while simultaneously managing external pressures, was a testament to both intelligence and patience. By combining tactical acumen with an unshakable presence, Dellacroce created an environment where order and stability prevailed, even amid the chaos of organized crime. Moreover, Dellacroce's mentorship of rising members ensured the perpetuation of his vision. He understood that sustaining power required preparing the next generation to navigate the complex terrain of criminal enterprise. He shared lessons not as commands but as guidance, teaching young associates the subtleties of negotiation, the importance of timing, and the quiet assertion of authority. Under his watch, emerging leaders learned to appreciate that the most effective control was often invisible, felt in decisions, respected in action, and acknowledged in silence. The late 1970s were also a period of expansion and consolidation for the Gambino family. Dellacroce played a crucial role in these efforts, managing sensitive negotiations with rival families and ensuring that potential conflicts were mitigated before escalating into violence. His strategic foresight prevented numerous disputes from becoming public or violent, reinforcing the family's dominance while protecting its members from unnecessary exposure. He understood that strength was demonstrated not only through victories, but also through restraint, diplomacy, and calculated risk. Yet, despite the calm precision with which he operated, Dellacroce was no stranger to the harsh realities of his world. Violence was an ever-present risk, a necessary instrument in the enforcement of rules and protection of interests. However, he wielded it judiciously, recognizing that reckless aggression could undermine stability and loyalty. Every action was measured, every consequence anticipated, and every decision executed with the awareness that true power required not the loudest show of force, but the quiet certainty of effectiveness. In reflecting on Dellacroce's role during this pivotal era, it becomes clear that his influence extended far beyond individual acts of authority. He embodied a philosophy of leadership that combined discretion, strategic planning, loyalty, and psychological insight. His decisions shaped not only the Gambino family's immediate fortunes, but also the long-term trajectory of organized crime in New York. By mastering the delicate balance between visibility and subtlety, force and diplomacy, tradition and adaptation, he secured a legacy that would endure well beyond his lifetime. The quiet power of Aniello Dellacroce in 1979 exemplified a principle that resonates throughout history. True authority is often exercised without fanfare, respected not because it is announced, but because it is consistently demonstrated. His life and work within the Gambino family offer a compelling portrait of a man whose influence was felt in every corner of New York's criminal world, yet whose presence remained understated, almost invisible, to those outside the inner circle. In a city defined by noise, flash, and spectacle, Dellacroce's enduring power was a testament to the strength found in patience, strategy, and quiet authority. The streets of New York in 1979 were alive with ambition, fear, and the subtle hum of power. For those who operated within the city's underworld, every decision carried weight, and every alliance was forged with care. Aniello Dellacroce, though not the most publicly notorious figure in organized crime, stood as one of the most formidable forces shaping the Gambino family's destiny. His authority was rarely flaunted, yet it was absolute a force that guided the family through turbulent times with a combination of strategic foresight, psychological acumen, and a deep understanding of human nature. Dellacroce's approach to leadership was distinct. Unlike others who relied solely on intimidation, he recognized that the strongest empires were built on loyalty and respect, not merely fear. He cultivated relationships with precision, understanding that the strength of an organization depended as much on trust and allegiance as on financial gain or territory. Soldiers and associates knew that Dellacroce's judgment was infallible because it was rooted in experience, patience, and a profound awareness of the risks inherent in criminal enterprise. The late 1970 seconds were a period of intense consolidation for the Gambino family. Internal disputes had the potential to escalate, rival families were testing boundaries, and law enforcement agencies were intensifying their efforts to dismantle organized crime networks. Within this landscape, Dellacroce's calm, deliberate presence was a stabilizing force. He managed internal conflicts with subtlety, often resolving disputes before they became crises, ensuring that the family's operations continued without disruption. His interventions were strategic, often invisible to the casual observer, yet they maintained the delicate balance necessary for the family's survival and growth. Dellacroce's influence extended into both the legitimate and illegitimate facets of the family's operations. From construction contracts and labor unions to illicit gambling and loan sharking, he oversaw ventures that generated substantial revenue while maintaining a veil of discretion. His meticulous approach to planning and execution ensured that operations ran smoothly, minimizing exposure and maximizing efficiency. Associates knew that under Dellacroce's guidance, every venture, no matter how minor it appeared, was treated with seriousness and strategic foresight. One of Dellacroce's defining traits was his ability to read people with remarkable accuracy. He understood the motivations, fears, and ambitions of those around him, and he used this knowledge to build loyalty and enforce discipline. Associates who might have been swayed by arrogance or impatience were tempered under his mentorship, learning that obedience and respect were best earned through wisdom and fairness rather than brute force alone. This approach not only solidified his power but also cultivated a culture within the Gambino family that valued competence, discretion, and loyalty above all else. Dellacroce's reputation extended beyond the immediate circles of the Gambino family. Rivals, union leaders, and even law enforcement officials recognized his influence. While others might have sought to provoke confrontation or assert dominance through visibility, Dellacroce relied on subtlety and strategy. His presence was felt in decisions made and alliances maintained, rather than in public spectacle. To those who understood the true mechanics of power and organized crime, Dellacroce was a figure whose reach and authority could not be underestimated, even if his name seldom appeared in newspapers or sensationalized media accounts. Amid the constant pressures of criminal enterprise, Dellacroce remained committed to cultivating the next generation of leadership. He mentored younger members, teaching them the intricacies of negotiation, strategic planning, and the subtle assertion of authority. Under his guidance, emerging leaders learned to balance ambition with prudence, understanding that rash action could jeopardize both personal safety and the family's broader interests. Dellacroce's mentorship was not merely about operational success. It was about instilling a philosophy of leadership that emphasized patience, intelligence, and the careful exercise of influence. While his methods were measured, Dellacroce was never naive to the realities of violence inherent in the underworld. He understood that force was sometimes necessary, yet he wielded it judiciously. Strategic strikes were executed with precision, and threats were neutralized before they could escalate into widespread conflict. Every act of aggression was calculated, aimed at preserving the family's stability and reinforcing the network of loyalty that underpinned its operations. Unlike those who relied on impulsive displays of power, Dellacroce recognized that enduring influence was built on calculated, consistent decisions rather than transient fear. The environment of New York City during this period was one of constant tension. Rival families were vigilant, seeking opportunities to undermine or expand at the expense of others. Law enforcement agencies were increasingly sophisticated, employing surveillance, informants, and undercover operations to disrupt criminal enterprises. In this climate, Dellacroce's quiet authority was both a shield and a sword. His discretion shielded him from undue attention, while his strategic intelligence enabled preemptive action against potential threats. He maintained a delicate balance, ensuring that the Gambino family remained dominant without attracting unnecessary scrutiny or provoking avoidable conflict. Dellacroce's power was reinforced by his understanding of timing. In the world of organized crime, the moment of action could determine success or failure. Dellacroce's ability to act decisively at the right moment distinguished him from others who relied on sheer force or impulsive judgment. Whether mediating disputes, negotiating alliances, or orchestrating operations, he demonstrated a keen sense of timing that maximized impact while minimizing risk. Associates came to understand that his interventions were not arbitrary. They were deliberate, informed by experience, foresight, and a comprehensive understanding of both human behavior and organizational dynamics. At the core of Dellacroce's philosophy was the belief that true authority was invisible yet undeniable. Power, in his view, was not measured by headlines or notoriety, but by the respect and loyalty one commanded. This principle guided his interactions with every level of the Gambino family, from seasoned capos to fledgling associates. His measured approach fostered a culture of accountability, competence, and cohesion, ensuring that the family operated efficiently even under the pressures of internal conflict and external scrutiny. Dellacroce's approach also encompassed the strategic management of perception. He recognized that reputation both within the family and in the broader underworld was a critical asset. By maintaining a composed, discreet presence, he reinforced the perception of intelligence, control, and authority. Associates internalized the understanding that Dellacroce's judgment was final and informed by a profound comprehension of both human behavior and criminal enterprise. This perception became a cornerstone of his influence, deterring challenges and solidifying his position within the Gambino hierarchy. Even amid constant pressures, Dellacroce displayed an understanding of the human element in leadership. He valued loyalty, competence, and discretion, cultivating relationships that strengthened the family's cohesion. Soldiers and associates understood that allegiance to Dellacroce was rooted not in fear alone, but in respect for his strategic insight, fairness, and unwavering commitment to the family's long-term success. His ability to command loyalty through intellect and principle rather than spectacle set him apart in a world often dominated by bravado and aggression. By 1979, Aniello Dellacroce had established himself as a figure whose influence extended across the city's criminal landscape. He was the architect of strategies that balanced power, loyalty, and discretion, ensuring the Gambino family's enduring dominance. His quiet authority and strategic foresight allowed the family to navigate turbulent times, manage conflicts, and expand influence without unnecessary exposure or risk. While history may often focus on more flamboyant figures, the true force behind the Gambinos' sustained power was Dellacroce, an embodiment of strategic patience, invisible influence, and the quiet assertion of authority. In the complex tapestry of New York's underworld, Dellacroce's legacy was unmistakable. He demonstrated that power was most potent when exercised with intelligence, foresight, and subtlety. His life and work illustrated that authority was not always about visibility or violence, but about the ability to shape events, guide people, and maintain cohesion in an environment defined by risk, competition, and unpredictability. By understanding the balance between loyalty, discretion, and strategic action, Dellacroce solidified a place in history as a man whose quiet power shaped the destiny of one of America's most formidable organized crime families. New York in the late 1970s was a city of contrasts, where glimmering ambition and stark danger existed side by side. Streets teemed with life, commerce, and the hidden currents of organized crime, and those who understood its rhythms moved with a careful precision that few could match. Aniello Dellacroce, a man whose presence was quiet yet undeniable, exemplified this mastery. In a world where reputation often relied on bluster or violence, Dellacroce relied on the subtle power of strategy, foresight, and understanding human nature. His influence within the Gambino crime family was profound, not because of spectacle, but because of his ability to operate in the shadows while ensuring that the family's interests were protected and advanced. Dellacroce's operations extended across multiple facets of the city's underworld, from controlling rackets and gambling and loan sharking, to orchestrating complex union negotiations and construction deals. He oversaw a vast network that seamlessly intertwined legal and illegal enterprises. Unlike many figures who drew attention to themselves, Dellacroce conducted business quietly, relying on trusted intermediaries and a deep understanding of timing and human behavior. This discretion made him an elusive target for law enforcement and a stabilizing force within the family, capable of managing both internal disputes and external threats with remarkable efficacy. The nature of Dellacroce's power was rooted in relationships. He recognized that loyalty was the currency of influence, and he cultivated it with care. Associates knew that their allegiance to him was rewarded not only with opportunity, but with guidance and protection. Soldiers and capos understood that Dellacroce valued competence, discretion, and strategic thinking, and he reinforced these qualities through mentorship and measured leadership. Unlike leaders who relied solely on fear to maintain control, Dellacroce's authority was built on respect, a respect earned through consistent judgment, fairness, and the ability to navigate complex situations without unnecessary conflict. Within the Gambino family, Dellacroce's presence was both grounding and strategic. He managed disputes before they could escalate, mediated tensions between ambitious subordinates, and ensured that the family's operations remained coordinated and efficient. His ability to maintain order extended beyond immediate operational concerns. He shaped the culture of the organization, instilling values of patience, loyalty, and careful planning. Soldiers and associates internalized these lessons, understanding that the strength of the family lay not only in individual acts of cunning or violence, but in the cohesion and discipline that Dellacroce nurtured. Dellacroce also understood the importance of perception. In an era when public attention and law enforcement scrutiny were growing, the Gambino family needed to project authority without drawing unnecessary notice. Dellacroce's subtle approach reinforced the perception of control and intelligence, while avoiding the pitfalls of overt display. To outsiders, he might have seemed inconspicuous, yet his decisions resonated throughout the family's operations. Rivals, law enforcement officials, and associates alike recognized his influence, often treating his words and actions as decisive indicators of the family's direction and priorities. Mentorship was a key aspect of Dellacroce's role. He recognized that sustaining power required preparing the next generation of leaders. Emerging members of the Gambino family were taught the intricacies of negotiation, strategy, and the quiet exertion of authority. Under Dellacroce's guidance, young associates learned that patience, discretion, and careful observation were as critical to success as ambition or aggression. He imparted lessons that extended beyond tactics, emphasizing the importance of loyalty, trust, and understanding human behavior. By doing so, Dellacroce ensured that the family's influence would endure, even as individual members rose and fell. While Dellacroce valued subtlety, he was not naive to the necessity of decisive action. The underworld of New York was fraught with risk, and threats could emerge suddenly from rival families or internal dissent. Dellacroce approached these challenges with precision, analyzing situations and deploying force only when necessary. Every decision was calculated, every move intentional. He recognized that rash aggression could destabilize the family, and therefore he acted with foresight, balancing firmness with strategic discretion. This method not only protected the family's interests, but also reinforced his reputation as a leader whose judgment was reliable and respected. The late 1970s also presented unique challenges for organized crime. Law enforcement agencies were increasingly sophisticated, employing surveillance, informants, and advanced investigative techniques to disrupt criminal networks. Amid these pressures, Dellacroce's strategic invisibility became a critical asset. He maintained layers of intermediaries, controlled the flow of information, and carefully monitored associates to minimize exposure. His awareness of both the operational and psychological dimensions of crime allowed him to anticipate potential threats and neutralize them before they could escalate, ensuring the family's continued stability and growth. Dellacroce's leadership style emphasized the human element of crime. He understood that fear alone could not sustain an organization. Loyalty, trust, and respect were equally important. Associates knew that Dellacroce valued integrity within the context of their operations, rewarding those who demonstrated competence and discretion. This approach cultivated a network of committed allies, whose allegiance was not forced but earned through consistent demonstration of authority, wisdom, and fairness. The culture he fostered was one of strategic cooperation, where each member understood their role in sustaining the family's dominance. Strategic timing was another hallmark of Dellacroce's approach. In organized crime, the timing of action could determine outcomes, and Dellacroce excelled at knowing when to intervene, when to negotiate, and when to enforce decisions through decisive measures. He balanced ambition with prudence, ensuring that every operation and interaction reinforced the family's long-term goals. Associates quickly learned that Dellacroce's decisions were deliberate, informed by experience, and rarely arbitrary. This understanding reinforced his authority, creating an environment where strategic patience and disciplined action were valued above impulsive displays of force. Dellacroce's reputation for strategic wisdom extended beyond the immediate family. Rivals, union leaders, and even law enforcement recognized the weight of his presence. His influence was subtle yet pervasive, guiding the course of events without overt confrontation. By maintaining a composed, measured demeanor, Dellacroce reinforced the perception of control and intelligence, ensuring that his decisions carried authority without attracting unnecessary scrutiny. This approach allowed the Gambino family to expand and solidify its operations while minimizing risk and maintaining cohesion. In reflecting on Dellacroce's role during this era, it becomes clear that his influence was built on a foundation of discretion, loyalty, and strategic insight. He navigated the complexities of criminal enterprise with an understanding that extended beyond immediate profit or territorial control. His leadership combined operational excellence with psychological insight, ensuring that the Gambino family operated efficiently, remained cohesive, and maintained dominance over rivals. Dellacroce's ability to balance visible and invisible influence, force and diplomacy, tradition and innovation, solidified his place as a central figure in the underworld of New York City. By the end of the decade, Dellacroce's quiet power had left an indelible mark on the Gambino family. He demonstrated that true authority was exercised through patience, strategic foresight, and the careful cultivation of loyalty. His approach to leadership, blending discretion with decisiveness, mentorship with operational control, ensured the family's enduring success and stability. In a world often defined by noise, spectacle, and impulsive aggression, Dellacroce's subtle mastery of influence and power set him apart as a man whose impact shaped the course of organized crime for years to come. The underworld of New York City in the late 1972 moved like a hidden current beneath the bustling streets, its power and influence invisible to the untrained eye, but unmistakable to those who lived within it. Aniello Dellacroce, the unassuming yet formidable figure at the heart of the Gambino crime family, understood these currents better than anyone. His strength lay not in loud displays of authority but in a nuanced comprehension of human behavior, the careful orchestration of operations, and the subtle exertion of influence. In a world dominated by risk and ambition, Dellacroce navigated with precision, earning a reputation as a leader whose judgment was trusted, respected, and rarely questioned. Dellacroce's command over the family extended far beyond the surface-level management of criminal enterprises. He supervised an intricate network of gambling operations, loan sharking schemes, union manipulations, and legitimate business dealings, ensuring that all ventures generated revenue while maintaining discretion. While the public often imagined mob life as chaotic and overtly violent, Dellacroce's orchestration of the family's activities was methodical, deliberate, and strategic. Every decision was informed by an awareness of both immediate consequences and long-term impact, allowing him to maintain stability amid the unpredictable dynamics of the criminal world. At the heart of Dellacroce's leadership was his understanding of loyalty. Unlike leaders who relied solely on fear to command obedience, Dellacroce cultivated genuine allegiance through fairness, consistency, and mentorship. Associates knew that their efforts were recognized and that competence, discretion, and intelligence were valued as much as loyalty. This approach created a network of devoted followers whose commitment was rooted in respect rather than coercion. Soldiers and capos alike came to understand that allegiance to Dellacroce offered not only protection and opportunity, but also guidance and insight into the subtle mechanics of power within the family. Dellacroce's influence was equally significant in internal family dynamics. Disputes among members, ambitions that could lead to instability, and the occasional challenge to authority were all managed with calculated precision. Dellacroce's interventions were rarely dramatic or public. Instead, he resolved conflicts with a strategic blend of negotiation, psychological insight, and, when necessary, decisive action. By preempting crises and maintaining cohesion, he ensured that the Gambino family remained focused on its broader objectives rather than being consumed by internal strife. His ability to balance firmness with fairness reinforced his authority and fostered a culture of disciplined obedience within the ranks. One of the defining features of Dellacroce's leadership was his mentorship of emerging members. He understood that the survival and expansion of the family depended on a new generation capable of navigating the complex, high-stakes world of organized crime. Young associates learned from him the importance of timing, discretion, and the quiet exercise of influence. They were taught to value patience over impulsive action, observation over assumption, and strategy over brute force. Dellacroce's guidance went beyond operational tactics. He imparted lessons about human behavior, negotiation, and the cultivation of loyalty, ensuring that the family's philosophy and stability would persist even as individuals rose and fell within the organization. Despite his calm and measured demeanor, Dellacroce was acutely aware of the constant threats surrounding him. Rival families sought opportunities to expand at the Gambino family's expense, and law enforcement agencies were increasingly vigilant and sophisticated. Surveillance, undercover operations, and informants created an environment of heightened risk. Dellacroce's response to these threats was characterized by foresight and discretion. He maintained careful control over communications, managed intermediaries to limit exposure, and monitored potential vulnerabilities. This strategic invisibility allowed the family to operate with relative freedom, while Dellacroce himself remained largely insulated from the attention that could jeopardize both his safety and the family's operations. The balance Dellacroce maintained between visible and invisible influence was one of his greatest strengths. By cultivating a presence that was respected but not ostentatious, he reinforced the perception of intelligence and authority without drawing unnecessary attention. Rivals, subordinates, and associates alike understood that his judgment carried weight and that his strategic interventions could decisively shape the outcome of conflicts. This approach allowed the Gambino family to consolidate power, expand operations, and navigate the complexities of inter-family rivalries with minimal disruption. Dellacroce also recognized that influence extended beyond operational control. He understood the significance of reputation and perception in maintaining authority. Within the criminal world, respect was a form of currency, often as valuable as money or territory. Dellacroce's consistent, measured behavior reinforced his credibility, ensuring that challenges to his authority were rare and ill-advised. His associates internalized the lesson that the most effective leadership was exercised through example, strategy, and judgment rather than intimidation alone. The late 1972s were also a period of cautious expansion for the Gambino family, and Dellacroce played a critical role in navigating new opportunities. Whether negotiating with rival factions, overseeing new business ventures, or managing internal hierarchies, his decisions were informed by both immediate practicality and long-term strategy. Every action was deliberate, every risk calculated, and every interaction designed to preserve the family's cohesion and dominance. Associates quickly learned that Dellacroce's calm presence was not passive. It was the hallmark of a leader who anticipated outcomes, mitigated threats, and maximized opportunities with precision. In the world Dellacroce inhabited, violence was ever present, but never arbitrary. He understood that force, when applied judiciously, could reinforce authority and protect interests. Yet, he avoided unnecessary aggression, recognizing that rash or conspicuous acts could destabilize operations and invite scrutiny. Instead, he exercised calculated decisiveness, striking only when necessary and ensuring that consequences reinforced both loyalty and order. This strategic approach to enforcement distinguished Dellacroce from less disciplined figures in organized crime, demonstrating that authority built on intelligence and foresight was often more enduring than power imposed through fear alone. Another essential aspect of Dellacroce's influence was his ability to integrate legitimate and illicit enterprises seamlessly. Construction contracts, labor unions, and business dealings were managed in ways that supported the family's financial base while minimizing exposure. By maintaining this balance, he ensured that the Gambino family's operations remained robust, diversified, and adaptable to shifting circumstances. Associates and allies respected his skill in orchestrating complex ventures, recognizing that his strategic mind extended beyond immediate gain to consider sustainability, risk management, and long-term advantage. Dellacroce's quiet power also extended to crisis management. In a world where unexpected challenges could arise from any direction, his calm, calculated approach was invaluable. Internal disputes, law enforcement pressure, and rival incursions were met with a combination of diplomacy, observation, and selective action. Associates learned that Dellacroce's interventions were both predictable and effective. Predictable in that they followed a consistent pattern of strategic reasoning, and effective in that they consistently protected the family's interests. This reputation further solidified his authority, reinforcing the perception that his judgment was final, and that his influence extended across every aspect of the organization. Ultimately, Aniello Dellacroce's role within the Gambino family during this period exemplified a model of leadership rooted in subtlety, strategy, and human insight. His authority was respected because it was earned, his influence felt because it was thoughtfully applied, and his mentorship ensured that the family's principles and operations could endure. In a world often defined by chaos, violence, and uncertainty, Dellacroce represented the power of quiet command, disciplined foresight, and unwavering commitment to both loyalty and strategic advantage. By understanding the dynamics of power, the nuances of human behavior, and the delicate balance between visibility and discretion, Dellacroce maintained a grip on the Gambino family's operations that few could challenge. His legacy during this period was one of stability, cohesion, and enduring influence, a testament to the strength that comes not from spectacle, but from intelligence, patience, and the careful orchestration of both people and events in the hidden corridors of power. The underworld of New York City in the late 1970s was a place where every choice carried consequence, and every interaction had the potential to alter the balance of power. Aniello Dellacroce moved through this world with a quiet authority that few could rival. While others relied on flamboyance or intimidation to assert dominance, Dellacroce relied on strategic foresight, a deep understanding of human behavior, and the patient orchestration of operations. Within the Gambino crime family, his influence was profound, shaping decisions, alliances, and the very culture of the organization, without the need for public display. Dellacroce's influence extended across both legitimate and illicit ventures. He oversaw gambling operations, loan sharking networks, union manipulations, and construction contracts with the same meticulous attention to detail. Each enterprise required careful planning and coordination, and Dellacroce understood that success depended not only on revenue generation but also on the maintenance of discretion and the minimization of risk. Associates understood that his authority was rooted in competence and foresight. Mistakes were not tolerated, but loyalty and diligence were consistently rewarded. A defining characteristic of Dellacroce's leadership was his ability to cultivate loyalty through respect rather than fear alone. Associates and soldiers knew that their commitment was recognized and valued. Competence, discretion, and strategic thinking were rewarded with guidance, opportunity, and protection. This approach fostered a network of dedicated followers who internalized the family's values and understood that allegiance to Dellacroce provided not only immediate benefit, but long-term security. In a world where betrayal and ambition were constant threats, this cultivated loyalty became a powerful stabilizing force. Internal cohesion within the Gambino family was a direct reflection of Dellacroce's leadership. Conflicts between members, potential power struggles, and rival ambitions were managed before they escalated into serious disputes. Dellacroce's interventions were deliberate and strategic. He used negotiation, subtle influence, and calculated decisiveness to resolve conflicts, ensuring that the organization remained united and focused on broader objectives. His ability to maintain this balance reinforced his authority, and created a culture in which discipline, patience, and loyalty were central to the family's operations. Dellacroce's mentorship of younger associates was equally critical. He recognized that sustaining the family's power required a new generation capable of navigating the complexities of organized crime. Through his guidance, emerging leaders learned the importance of timing, discretion, and the subtle exercise of authority. He taught that impulsive action could compromise both personal safety and organizational stability, and that true influence was often exerted silently, through strategy, patience, and observation. This philosophy ensured that the Gambino family's traditions, strategies, and cohesion would endure beyond individual lifespans. While he valued subtlety, Dellacroce was never blind to the necessity of decisive action. Violence, though carefully measured, was an integral aspect of maintaining authority and protecting interests. Dellacroce employed force selectively, ensuring that any action taken reinforced loyalty, resolved threats, and preserved organizational stability. He avoided unnecessary aggression, understanding that rash violence could undermine long-term objectives. This disciplined approach to enforcement distinguished him from less measured figures in organized crime and demonstrated that intelligence and strategy often wielded greater power than mere brutality. The Gambino family operated in a constantly shifting landscape. Rival families tested boundaries, internal ambitions threatened stability, and law enforcement agencies became increasingly vigilant and sophisticated. Dellacroce's strategic acumen allowed him to navigate these pressures effectively. He monitored threats carefully, controlled communications, and maintained layers of intermediaries to reduce exposure. His capacity to anticipate problems before they arose and address them proactively was central to maintaining the family's dominance and minimizing risk. Perception and reputation were essential to Dellacroce's strategy. He understood that respect both within the family and across the broader underworld was a powerful tool. By maintaining a calm, controlled presence, he reinforced the perception of intelligence and authority without drawing unnecessary attention. Rivals, associates, and even law enforcement agents recognized the influence he wielded, often adjusting their strategies in anticipation of his actions. This subtle manipulation of perception enhanced his effectiveness, allowing him to guide outcomes without overt confrontation. The integration of legitimate and illicit operations was another key to Dellacroce's strategy. Construction contracts, labor unions, and business ventures provided financial stability and a veneer of legality, while supporting the family's broader criminal interests. Dellacroce ensured that these operations were carefully managed, reinforcing the Gambino family's influence while minimizing the risks of exposure or legal intervention. Associates respected his ability to orchestrate these complex networks, understanding that his strategic vision extended beyond immediate gain to consider long-term security and influence. Timing remained a cornerstone of Dellacroce's effectiveness. In organized crime, the precise moment to act could determine success or failure. Dellacroce had an exceptional ability to recognize when to negotiate, when to intervene, and when to employ force. This sensitivity to timing allowed him to maximize impact, neutralize threats, and preserve stability. Associates quickly learned that his interventions were deliberate and informed by a comprehensive understanding of the situation, reinforcing his reputation as a leader whose judgment was both reliable and decisive. Dellacroce's approach emphasized the human element of leadership. He valued trust, loyalty, and competence as much as the operational outcomes of any enterprise. Soldiers, associates, and leaders alike understood that his expectations were clear. Loyalty was earned, discretion was essential, and competence was rewarded. This approach created a culture of accountability and professionalism within the family, strengthening cohesion and ensuring that decisions were executed effectively. Even in the face of adversity, Dellacroce maintained a strategic perspective. He understood that immediate crises were part of a broader continuum, and that long-term planning was essential. His ability to evaluate risk, anticipate outcomes, and act judiciously allowed the Gambino family to navigate both predictable and unexpected challenges successfully. Associates came to understand that his calm presence was not passive. It was an active, calculated exercise of influence, designed to guide the family through a complex and often dangerous environment. By 1979, Dellacroce's quiet power had become a defining force within the Gambino family. His leadership combined operational precision, strategic foresight, and the cultivation of loyalty, creating a robust and adaptable organization. While his methods were subtle, the outcomes were tangible. Stability in the family's operations, disciplined execution of strategy, and enduring influence over associates and rivals alike. Dellacroce's philosophy demonstrated that true power was often exercised not through visibility or spectacle, but through intelligence, patience, and the careful orchestration of people and events. Ultimately, Aniello Dellacroce's role in the Gambino family exemplified the effectiveness of quiet authority. By combining strategic foresight, mentorship, disciplined enforcement, and a keen understanding of human behavior, he maintained control and guided the family through a challenging period in its history. His influence extended beyond immediate operations, shaping the culture, values, and long-term strategy of one of New York's most powerful organized crime families. In a world defined by unpredictability, risk, and ambition, Dellacroce's leadership demonstrated that discretion, intellect, and patience could command greater respect and enduring power than overt displays of strength alone. The rhythm of New York City in 1979 pulsed with both opportunity and danger, a complex backdrop against which Aniello Dellacroce exercised his quiet but undeniable influence. In the world of organized crime, success depended on more than brute strength or daring acts. It required insight, timing, and a mastery of human behavior. Dellacroce understood these dynamics intimately. While many figures in the Gambino family and beyond were drawn to visible displays of power, Dellacroce relied on subtlety, discretion, and strategic foresight to assert control. His authority was felt even when his presence went largely unnoticed, shaping decisions and guiding operations without the need for spectacle. Dellacroce's operations spanned a wide array of activities. He managed gambling enterprises, loan sharking networks, and union arrangements with precision, ensuring that profits flowed while maintaining discretion and minimizing exposure to law enforcement. Beyond these ventures, he supervised legitimate business dealings that provided both revenue and cover, creating a multifaceted empire that balanced risk and reward. Each endeavor required careful planning, coordination, and the ability to anticipate the moves of rivals and associates alike. Associates recognized that Dellacroce's guidance was not merely advisory. It was directive, informed by experience, insight, and a keen understanding of the stakes involved. Central to Dellacroce's influence was his ability to cultivate loyalty through respect. Fear alone could compel compliance temporarily, but enduring allegiance required a deeper bond. Soldiers and capos knew that competence, discretion, and intelligence were valued, and that loyalty to Dellacroce was reciprocated with opportunity, guidance, and protection. This approach fostered a network of committed followers whose allegiance was rooted in trust and mutual understanding rather than coercion. Within the Gambino family, this cultivated loyalty created stability and cohesion, reinforcing Dellacroce's authority while minimizing internal conflict. Internal disputes and rival ambitions were inevitable in any criminal organization, yet Dellacroce had a remarkable ability to maintain equilibrium. Conflicts were resolved before escalating. Tensions were diffused through negotiation, and strategic interventions ensured that the family remained unified and focused on its objectives. Dellacroce's leadership style combined firmness with diplomacy. He wielded authority decisively when necessary, yet he always considered the broader implications of his actions. This careful calibration of power and influence reinforced his reputation as a leader whose judgment was trusted and whose decisions were respected. Mentorship was a defining feature of Dellacroce's role. He recognized that the survival and growth of the family depended on cultivating capable successors who could navigate the complex terrain of organized crime. Emerging leaders were taught to value patience, observation, and the subtle exercise of influence over impulsive action. Dellacroce emphasized that true authority was often invisible, felt in decisions, respected in actions, and acknowledged through loyalty rather than ostentation. Through his guidance, younger members internalized these lessons, ensuring that the Gambino family's traditions, strategies, and stability would endure beyond individual tenures. Dellacroce was not naive about the necessity of violence in his world. Force was a tool, carefully measured and applied only when required. He understood that unchecked aggression could destabilize operations and provoke retaliation. Yet he also recognized its value as a means of reinforcing authority and resolving threats. Every act of enforcement was deliberate, designed to maintain order, command respect, and protect the family's interests. Unlike impulsive figures who relied on intimidation alone, Dellacroce demonstrated that strategic, controlled application of force could achieve far greater results than rash or conspicuous displays. Rival families in law enforcement posed constant challenges. The late 1970 seconds were marked by increased scrutiny, sophisticated surveillance techniques, and the proliferation of informants. Dellacroce's response combined caution, strategic planning, and proactive risk management. He maintained intermediaries to control the flow of information, monitored potential vulnerabilities, and acted decisively to neutralize threats before they escalated. This approach allowed the Gambino family to operate effectively while minimizing exposure, demonstrating the value of foresight and discretion in maintaining long-term stability and influence. Perception was as critical as action in Dellacroce's leadership. He understood that reputation could amplify influence and deter challenges. By maintaining a composed, strategic presence, he reinforced the perception of intelligence, authority, and control without attracting undue attention. Rivals and associates alike recognized that his judgment carried weight and that his interventions could decisively influence outcomes. Dellacroce's mastery of perception, combined with his operational competence, ensured that his authority extended across every aspect of the family's enterprises. The integration of legitimate and illicit operations was a key component of Dellacroce's strategic vision. Business ventures, union contracts, and construction arrangements provided both cover and financial stability while supporting the family's broader criminal activities. Dellacroce orchestrated these operations with precision, ensuring that they complemented one another, minimized risk, and maximized profitability. Associates admired his ability to manage these complex networks, recognizing that his influence extended beyond immediate gains to encompass long-term strategy and sustainability. Timing remained an essential element of Dellacroce's effectiveness. In organized crime, the precise moment to act could determine success or failure. Dellacroce excelled at recognizing these moments, deploying negotiation, intervention, or force with calculated precision. His understanding of timing allowed him to neutralize threats, seize opportunities, and maintain stability. Associates quickly learned that his interventions were deliberate, informed by foresight, and rarely arbitrary. This predictability reinforced his authority while highlighting his strategic intelligence. Dellacroce's leadership emphasized the human element of authority. Trust, loyalty, and competence were fundamental to sustaining influence. Associates understood that success required alignment with his expectations. Loyalty was earned, discretion was essential, and operational competence was rewarded. This approach fostered a disciplined, professional environment within the family, where decision-making was effective and objectives were consistently met. The culture he cultivated ensured that each member of the Gambino family understood their role in preserving cohesion and reinforcing the family's dominance. Even in the face of adversity, Dellacroce maintained perspective. Crises, whether internal disputes, law enforcement pressure, or rival threats, were approached with calm deliberation and strategic foresight. He evaluated risks, anticipated outcomes, and acted judiciously, preserving both the family's stability and long-term interests. Associates came to view his calm presence not as passive observation, but as an active exercise of strategic influence, guiding the family through turbulent and unpredictable circumstances. By the end of the decade, Dellacroce's quiet power had become an enduring force within the Gambino family. His leadership combined operational precision, mentorship, strategic foresight, and the cultivation of loyalty, creating a resilient and adaptable organization. While his methods were subtle, the outcomes were undeniable. Disciplined execution, internal cohesion, and sustained dominance over rivals. Dellacroce's philosophy demonstrated that real authority was not dependent on spectacle or aggression, but on intelligence, patience, and the careful orchestration of people, timing, and strategy. Ultimately, Aniello Dellacroce's role in the Gambino family exemplified the potency of quiet, measured influence. By combining foresight, mentorship, and strategic execution, he maintained control over a sprawling network of criminal and legitimate enterprises. His legacy during this period highlighted the power of discretion, intelligence, and loyalty in shaping the destiny of one of New York City's most formidable organized crime families. In an environment defined by volatility and ambition, Dellacroce's leadership proved that subtlety, calculation, and unwavering commitment could wield more enduring power than any display of force or notoriety. By the late 1970s, New York City had become a complex web of competing powers, both legitimate and illicit. Aniello Dellacroce, a figure often overlooked by the public but feared and respected within the Gambino crime family, navigated this intricate landscape with quiet authority. His influence was neither flamboyant nor sensationalized. It was subtle, strategic, and far-reaching. Dellacroce's presence shaped the decisions, alliances, and culture of the family in ways that were rarely visible to outsiders but unmistakably felt by those within the inner circle. The Gambino family, one of the most powerful organized crime organizations in the city, relied on a network of operations that spanned gambling, loan sharking, union influence, and construction contracts. Dellacroce's oversight ensured that these ventures functioned efficiently, generating profit while remaining discreet and largely undetected by law enforcement. Each operation was carefully coordinated, with attention to both immediate outcomes and long-term sustainability. Associates quickly learned that under Dellacroce's guidance, precision and foresight were paramount. Mistakes were rare, and consequences were carefully managed. A cornerstone of Dellacroce's leadership was his ability to foster loyalty through respect. Fear might compel short-term compliance, but lasting allegiance required trust, fairness, and recognition. Soldiers and capos under his influence understood that competence, discretion, and strategic thinking were valued as highly as loyalty itself. By cultivating genuine dedication, Dellacroce created a network of associates whose commitment was rooted in mutual understanding rather than coercion. This loyalty provided stability and resilience, allowing the Gambino family to operate cohesively despite the constant pressures of internal ambition and external threats. Internal dynamics were always a potential source of tension. Power struggles, personal ambitions, and conflicts of interest could quickly destabilize an organization if not carefully managed. Dellacroce addressed these challenges with calculated intervention, balancing firmness with diplomacy. He resolved disputes before they escalated, guided ambitious subordinates toward constructive action, and maintained order without resorting to unnecessary violence. His strategic approach not only preserved internal cohesion, but also reinforced his authority, demonstrating that true leadership combined insight, patience, and decisiveness. Dellacroce also understood the importance of mentorship in sustaining the family's power. He took a hands-on approach with emerging members, teaching them the subtleties of negotiation, the timing of strategic action, and the management of human relationships. His lessons emphasized patience, observation, and the quiet exercise of influence, rather than impulsive or reckless behavior. By instilling these principles, Dellacroce ensured that the next generation would uphold the family's traditions and operate with the same disciplined approach to leadership and strategy that had defined his own tenure. Violence was an ever-present tool in the criminal world, but Dellacroce wielded it with measured discretion. He understood that rash or public displays of aggression could invite retaliation, undermine loyalty, or attract law enforcement attention. Force was applied judiciously, designed to reinforce order, resolve threats, and command respect. Associates recognized that when Dellacroce intervened directly, the consequences were decisive and strategic, never arbitrary. His approach demonstrated that true power could be exercised through calculated action, rather than through constant intimidation or spectacle. The late 1970s were also a time of increased scrutiny from law enforcement. Federal agencies employed advanced surveillance techniques, informants, and undercover operations to dismantle organized crime networks. Dellacroce's strategic foresight was critical in navigating these challenges. He controlled the flow of information, maintained layers of intermediaries, and closely monitored operations to reduce exposure. This approach allowed the Gambino family to continue its activities while mitigating the risk of prosecution, demonstrating the importance of discretion, planning, and vigilance in maintaining long-term influence. Perception was as important as action in Dellacroce's strategy. He understood that reputation was a form of power in itself. By maintaining a calm and composed demeanor, he reinforced the perception of intelligence and authority, ensuring that rivals and associates alike treated his decisions with respect. His influence extended beyond direct command. It shaped expectations, guided behavior, and deterred challenges. Dellacroce's ability to manipulate perception strategically allowed him to maintain control while minimizing unnecessary confrontation. Integrating legitimate and illicit operations was another hallmark of Dellacroce's leadership. Construction projects, union dealings, and business ventures were orchestrated to support the family's broader interests while providing a layer of legitimacy. Dellacroce ensured that these enterprises were coordinated effectively, generating revenue while mitigating risk. Associates recognized the sophistication of this approach, understanding that long-term influence required balancing multiple streams of power and control. The family's dominance in both legal and illegal spheres underscored Dellacroce's strategic vision and his ability to manage complex, interconnected networks. Timing was a critical component of Dellacroce's strategy. In the criminal world, acting at the right moment could determine success or failure. Dellacroce's intuition and experience allowed him to identify the precise moments to negotiate, intervene, or employ force. This mastery of timing maximized impact and minimized risk, allowing the Gambino family to maintain stability and seize opportunities. Associates learned that his decisions were deliberate, informed, and rarely arbitrary, reinforcing the understanding that his leadership combined patience with strategic precision. Dellacroce's emphasis on the human element of leadership was another key to his effectiveness. Trust, loyalty, and competence were fundamental to sustaining influence. Associates understood that alignment with his principles was essential. Loyalty was earned, discretion was required, and competence was rewarded. This approach created a disciplined, professional environment where each member of the Gambino family understood their role in maintaining cohesion, executing strategy, and preserving the family's dominance. Even amid adversity, Dellacroce maintained perspective. Internal disputes, law enforcement pressure, and rival challenges were all approached with calculated foresight and measured action. He evaluated risks, anticipated consequences, and acted judiciously to safeguard the family's stability and long-term interests. His calm, strategic presence reassured associates, providing a steadying influence in a world characterized by unpredictability and constant threat. By 1979, Aniello Dellacroce's quiet authority had solidified into a defining force within the Gambino family. His leadership combined operational efficiency, mentorship, strategic foresight, and loyalty cultivation, creating a resilient organization capable of navigating both internal and external challenges. While his methods were understated, the results were undeniable. Cohesive operations, disciplined execution, and sustained dominance over rivals. Dellacroce's approach illustrated that true authority was exercised through intelligence, patience, and strategic orchestration, rather than through flamboyance or aggression. Ultimately, Dellacroce's role exemplified the potency of quiet leadership. By blending foresight, mentorship, and decisive action with an understanding of human behavior, he maintained control over a vast network of operations and shaped the culture and strategy of one of New York City's most formidable organized crime families. His legacy demonstrated that discretion, calculation, and unwavering commitment could yield enduring power and influence, even in the most volatile and unpredictable of environments. By 1979, the underworld of New York City had become an intricate web of power, influence, and calculated risk, and Aniello Dellacroce operated at the very center of it. His presence in the Gambino crime family was a stabilizing force, guiding the organization with subtle authority that few outsiders fully recognized. While others relied on flamboyance, intimidation, or headline-grabbing violence, Dellacroce relied on strategy, foresight, and a nuanced understanding of human behavior. His influence shaped the family's decisions, alliances, and operations, ensuring that its power remained both enduring and discreet. Dellacroce's oversight spanned an array of ventures, both illicit and legitimate. Gambling operations, loan sharking networks, and union manipulation were coordinated with precision, each designed to generate revenue while maintaining secrecy. At the same time, legitimate business dealings, particularly in construction and labor contracts, provided both financial stability and cover for the family's criminal activities. Dellacroce's ability to integrate these diverse enterprises demonstrated not only operational intelligence, but also a keen understanding of risk management and long-term strategy. Associates quickly realized that under his guidance, every action had a purpose, and every decision carried weight. Central to Dellacroce's leadership was his ability to cultivate loyalty through respect and mentorship, rather than fear alone. Soldiers and capos recognized that competence, discretion, and intelligence were valued as much as loyalty. By rewarding these qualities and offering guidance and protection in return, Dellacroce fostered a network of committed associates whose allegiance was rooted in respect and trust. This approach created stability within the Gambino family, ensuring that even as ambition and personal agendas surfaced, cohesion and strategic alignment remained intact. Internal conflicts, however, were inevitable in an organization of this size and complexity. Dellacroce managed disputes with skill and subtlety, using negotiation, psychological insight, and measured intervention to resolve tensions before they escalated. Ambitious subordinates were guided toward productive avenues, and potential challenges to his authority were neutralized strategically. This combination of firmness and diplomacy allowed Dellacroce to maintain control without unnecessary confrontation, reinforcing his position as a leader whose judgment was trusted and respected. Mentorship played a central role in Dellacroce's long-term vision for the family. He recognized that sustaining power required a new generation capable of navigating the high-stakes world of organized crime. Young associates were taught the importance of observation, patience, and the quiet exercise of influence. Dellacroce emphasized that impulsive actions often led to failure, whereas strategic foresight and calculated decisions could protect both personal and organizational interests. This mentorship ensured that the Gambino family's traditions, philosophy, and operational efficiency would persist, providing continuity and resilience even as individual members rose and fell within the organization. While Dellacroce valued subtlety, he was also acutely aware of the role of force in maintaining authority. Violence, when applied strategically, reinforced loyalty and resolved threats, but reckless aggression could jeopardize stability and invite law enforcement scrutiny. Dellacroce's use of force was deliberate, targeted, and often invisible to outsiders, ensuring that consequences were clear without undermining the family's operations. This measured approach distinguished him from more impulsive figures, demonstrating that true power often lay in strategic intelligence rather than overt displays of strength. Law enforcement pressures were intensifying during this period. Federal agencies employed advanced surveillance, informants, and undercover operations to disrupt organized crime. Dellacroce's strategic acumen allowed him to navigate these threats effectively. He controlled the flow of information, maintained layers of intermediaries, and monitored potential vulnerabilities. By anticipating challenges before they emerged, he minimized the risk of exposure, ensuring the Gambino family could continue its operations while avoiding unnecessary legal entanglements. Perception and reputation were as essential to Dellacroce's strategy as operational oversight. He understood that authority in organized crime was often reinforced by the way others perceived it. By maintaining a composed and calculated presence, he projected intelligence and control, ensuring that rivals and associates alike recognized his influence. Dellacroce's careful management of perception amplified his authority, allowing him to guide outcomes without relying on public displays or dramatic confrontations. His leadership was defined as much by what he achieved unseen as by the results that were visible to others. Integrating legitimate and illicit operations was a key component of Dellacroce's long-term strategy. Construction projects, labor unions, and business ventures provided revenue and legitimacy while supporting the family's criminal enterprises. Dellacroce coordinated these ventures with precision, ensuring that each component complemented the others and minimized risk. Associates came to respect his ability to manage these interconnected networks, recognizing that sustaining power required a balance of financial acumen, operational efficiency, and strategic discretion. The family's dominance in multiple spheres underscored Dellacroce's capacity to orchestrate complex, high-stakes operations with skill and foresight. Timing remained a critical element in Dellacroce's effectiveness. In the world of organized crime, success often depended on acting at precisely the right moment. Dellacroce's intuition and experience enabled him to identify opportunities, deploy interventions, or exercise authority with calculated precision. By understanding the importance of timing, he maximized the impact of every action while minimizing risk. Associates learned that his decisions were deliberate, informed, and rarely arbitrary, reinforcing their respect for his strategic insight and enhancing cohesion within the organization. The human element of leadership was central to Dellacroce's influence. Trust, competence, and loyalty were fundamental to sustaining authority. Associates understood that adherence to his principles, discretion, competence, and allegiance was essential for success within the family. This cultivated an environment of discipline and professionalism, where each member understood their role in preserving stability and executing strategy. By emphasizing these qualities, Dellacroce ensured that the Gambino family operated with a level of cohesion and efficiency that made it resilient to both internal and external pressures. Even under constant pressure from rivals, law enforcement, and internal dynamics, Dellacroce maintained perspective. He approached crises with calm deliberation, evaluating risks, anticipating outcomes, and acting judiciously. His leadership reassured associates, providing a steadying influence that guided the family through challenges and uncertainties. Dellacroce's presence, though often understated, was a cornerstone of stability within the Gambino family, reinforcing the notion that true authority is exercised through intelligence, strategic planning, and disciplined execution, rather than through visibility or intimidation alone. By the close of the decade, Aniello Dellacroce's quiet power had become one of the most enduring forces within the Gambino family. His leadership combined operational efficiency, mentorship, strategic foresight, and loyalty cultivation to create a resilient organization capable of thriving amid uncertainty. While subtle in method, the outcomes of his approach were unmistakable. Disciplined execution, cohesive operations, and sustained influence over rivals and associates alike. Dellacroce demonstrated that real authority was exercised through intelligence, discretion, and the thoughtful orchestration of events rather than through spectacle or impulsive action. Ultimately, Dellacroce's role within the Gambino family illustrated the enduring power of subtle, calculated influence. By combining mentorship, strategic foresight, disciplined enforcement, and an understanding of human behavior, he maintained control over complex networks, guided the family's long-term strategy, and ensured operational stability. His leadership underscored that in an unpredictable and often volatile world, discretion, patience, and strategic execution could achieve lasting power and influence, solidifying his place as one of the most consequential figures in New York City's organized crime history. By 1979, Aniello Dellacroce had firmly established himself as one of the most influential figures within the Gambino crime family. A man whose authority was exercised not through spectacle or bluster, but through careful strategy, foresight, and an almost intuitive understanding of human behavior. In a city defined by ambition, risk, and the constant tension between visibility and discretion, Dellacroce thrived, shaping the operations, culture, and internal cohesion of the family in ways that few outsiders fully grasped. His presence was felt across the family's enterprises, guiding decision-making, mediating disputes, and maintaining stability in an environment where volatility was the norm. Dellacroce's scope of influence was vast. He oversaw gambling operations, loan sharking networks, union arrangements, and construction contracts, all functioning under a carefully maintained veil of discretion. Each enterprise was designed to generate profit while minimizing exposure to law enforcement or rival interference. Beyond the immediate operational considerations, Dellacroce's strategic oversight ensured that the Gambino family maintained both financial stability and organizational cohesion. Associates quickly learned that his directives carried weight, that mistakes were carefully managed, and that adherence to his guidance could mean the difference between advancement and danger. A critical element of Dellacroce's leadership was his ability to cultivate loyalty through respect rather than fear alone. Soldiers, capos, and emerging members of the organization recognized that discretion, competence, and strategic thinking were highly valued. By rewarding these qualities and fostering a culture of mentorship and guidance, Dellacroce built a network of committed associates whose allegiance was genuine, rooted in trust and mutual benefit. This cultivated loyalty provided a stabilizing force within the family, ensuring that internal conflicts did not escalate, and that collective goals remained prioritized above personal ambition. Internal disputes were an inevitable feature of any large organization, especially one involved in high-stakes criminal enterprises. Dellacroce managed these tensions with skill, using negotiation, strategic intervention, and subtle influence to prevent conflicts from destabilizing operations. Ambitious subordinates were guided toward productive avenues. Rivalries were neutralized without unnecessary spectacle, and potential challenges to authority were carefully addressed. His combination of firmness, diplomacy, and foresight created an environment in which discipline and respect were paramount, reinforcing his position as a trusted and authoritative figure within the family. Mentorship was a hallmark of Dellacroce's approach. Recognizing the need to cultivate capable successors, he took an active role in training younger associates in the principles of strategy, patience, and observation. He emphasized that impulsive action often led to failure, whereas careful planning and the exercise of subtle influence could yield lasting results. Through this guidance, emerging leaders learned to navigate the complexities of organized crime, ensuring that the family's operations, culture, and traditions would endure beyond individual lifespans. Dellacroce's mentorship was not merely technical. It instilled in his protégés a philosophy of leadership that balanced loyalty, intelligence, and discretion. While Dellacroce preferred subtlety, he was not blind to the role of force in maintaining authority. Violence was applied judiciously, designed to resolve threats, reinforce loyalty, and protect the family's interests. Unlike impulsive or conspicuous figures, Dellacroce's use of force was calculated and purposeful, ensuring that every action reinforced discipline and operational cohesion. Associates understood that when Dellacroce acted decisively, it was both necessary and strategic, further enhancing his credibility and solidifying his influence within the organization. The late 1970s brought increased scrutiny from law enforcement agencies. Federal investigations, sophisticated surveillance techniques, and a growing network of informants created an environment of heightened risk. Dellacroce's strategic foresight allowed him to navigate these challenges effectively. He controlled communications, maintained multiple layers of intermediaries, and monitored operations to minimize exposure. By anticipating threats before they emerged, Dellacroce preserved the Gambino family's stability and operational capacity, demonstrating the critical importance of discretion, planning, and vigilance in a complex criminal landscape. Perception played a central role in Dellacroce's authority. Reputation was power, and the way others viewed him influenced behavior and deterred challenges. By maintaining a calm, composed, and calculated presence, Dellacroce reinforced the perception of intelligence and authority. Rivals, associates, and even law enforcement recognized the weight of his judgment and the strategic impact of his interventions. Dellacroce understood that his influence extended beyond direct action. It shaped expectations, guided decisions, and subtly directed the flow of events, all without requiring overt confrontation. The integration of legitimate and illicit operations was another key to Dellacroce's success. Construction contracts, union arrangements, and business ventures were orchestrated to complement the family's criminal enterprises while providing stability and legal cover. Each component of this network was carefully managed to maximize revenue, minimize risk, and ensure alignment with broader strategic goals. Associates respected his ability to coordinate these complex operations, recognizing that sustaining power required balancing multiple interests and ensuring long-term resilience. This dual approach of blending visible and hidden operations solidified the Gambino family's dominance in New York's social and economic spheres. Timing was an essential element of Dellacroce's strategic effectiveness. He possessed an intuitive sense of when to act, when to negotiate, and when to employ force. His timing allowed him to neutralize threats, seize opportunities, and maintain stability across the family's enterprises. Associates quickly recognized that Dellacroce's decisions were deliberate, informed by foresight, and rarely arbitrary. This understanding reinforced his authority and underscored the sophistication of his strategic approach, emphasizing patience and calculated action over impulsive reaction. Dellacroce's leadership emphasized the human element of organized crime. Trust, loyalty, and competence were foundational to sustaining influence. Associates understood that loyalty was earned, discretion was essential, and operational skill was rewarded. This emphasis created a disciplined, professional culture where each member knew their role in preserving cohesion, executing strategy, and reinforcing the family's dominance. Dellacroce's approach to leadership highlighted the importance of relationships, mentorship, and understanding human behavior as critical components of long-term power. Even amid challenges from rivals, law enforcement pressure, and internal tension, Dellacroce maintained a clear perspective. Crises were approached with strategic calm, with risks evaluated, outcomes anticipated, and actions carefully executed to safeguard both immediate and long-term interests. His steady presence reassured associates, providing stability in a volatile and unpredictable environment. The impact of his leadership extended far beyond visible actions, shaping the family's culture, operational priorities, and strategic direction in subtle but enduring ways. By the close of 1979, Aniello Dellacroce's quiet authority had cemented his role as a central figure within the Gambino crime family. His leadership combined strategic foresight, operational precision, mentorship, and loyalty cultivation, creating an adaptable and resilient organization. While his methods were subtle, the results were unmistakable. Disciplined execution, cohesive operations, and sustained dominance. Dellacroce's philosophy demonstrated that true authority is exercised through intelligence, foresight, and careful orchestration rather than through spectacle or impulsive action. Ultimately, Dellacroce exemplified the power of subtle, calculated influence in organized crime. By blending mentorship, strategic foresight, disciplined enforcement, and an understanding of human nature, he maintained control over complex networks, guided the family's long-term strategy, and ensured organizational stability. In a world defined by volatility, ambition, and constant risk, Dellacroce's leadership demonstrated that discretion, patience, and strategic execution could yield enduring influence and power, solidifying his place as one of the most consequential figures in New York City's criminal history. By the dawn of the 1980 seconds, New York City's criminal landscape had become a high-stakes chessboard, with families maneuvering carefully for influence, territory, and opportunity. Aniello Dellacroce stood at the center of this intricate web, a figure whose quiet authority belied the breadth of his power. Unlike more ostentatious mob figures, Dellacroce did not rely on spectacle or loud displays of force to assert dominance. Instead, his influence was exercised through strategic foresight, meticulous planning, and an almost instinctive understanding of human behavior. Within the Gambino crime family, his presence shaped operations, alliances, and internal culture, providing a stabilizing force that ensured continuity amid uncertainty. Dellacroce's operational scope was vast. He supervised gambling networks, loan sharking operations, and union dealings with precise coordination, ensuring profitability while maintaining secrecy. Construction contracts and legitimate business ventures were carefully integrated into the family's operations, offering financial stability and a layer of legitimacy that masked the illicit nature of other enterprises. Every operation was meticulously managed, reflecting Dellacroce's deep understanding of risk, timing, and human psychology. Associates quickly recognized that under his guidance, every decision carried weight, and the repercussions of misjudgment could be severe. Central to Dellacroce's enduring influence was his ability to cultivate loyalty through respect and mentorship rather than fear alone. Soldiers and capos understood that competence, discretion, and strategic thinking were valued as highly as blind allegiance. By rewarding these qualities, Dellacroce fostered a network of associates whose commitment was grounded in trust, admiration, and recognition of his judgment. This cultivated loyalty was a stabilizing force within the family, ensuring that internal conflicts were minimized and that collective objectives remained the guiding priority. Internal tensions were inevitable in any organization operating in a high-stakes, high-risk environment. Power struggles, rival ambitions, and personal grievances could destabilize operations if not carefully managed. Dellacroce's approach combined negotiation, subtle influence, and measured intervention. Disputes were addressed before escalating. Ambitious subordinates were guided toward constructive paths, and potential challenges to authority were neutralized strategically. This balance of diplomacy and firmness reinforced his authority, establishing Dellacroce as a leader whose judgment was respected and whose decisions were rarely questioned. Mentorship was a cornerstone of Dellacroce's strategy for long-term organizational strength. He understood that the future of the family depended on cultivating a new generation of capable leaders who could navigate the complex dynamics of organized crime. Young associates were taught to observe, to exercise patience, and to influence situations subtly rather than through impulsive action. Dellacroce emphasized that real power often went unnoticed, exerted through decisions, relationships, and timing, rather than through overt displays of authority. Through this guidance, the family ensured continuity, resilience, and adherence to core principles. Even as individual members rose and fell within the hierarchy, though subtle in his approach, Dellacroce was fully aware of the necessity of violence in maintaining authority. Force was a tool to be used judiciously, applied to resolve threats, reinforce discipline, and protect the family's interests. Unlike impulsive figures who relied on intimidation or brute strength alone, Dellacroce's interventions were calculated, strategic, and decisive. Associates understood that when he acted directly, the outcome would be precise and purposeful, further consolidating his influence and reinforcing the perception of his control over both people and operations. The late 1970s and early 1980s also brought heightened scrutiny from law enforcement. Federal agencies employed sophisticated surveillance methods, informants, and undercover operations to dismantle organized crime networks. Dellacroce's foresight allowed him to manage these threats effectively. He carefully controlled communications, maintained multiple layers of intermediaries, and constantly monitored potential vulnerabilities. By anticipating law enforcement actions before they could compromise operations, Dellacroce ensured that the family's activities continued with minimal exposure, highlighting the importance of discretion, planning, and proactive risk management. Perception remained a critical tool in Dellacroce's leadership. Reputation was a form of power, influencing behavior, guiding interactions, and deterring potential challenges. By maintaining a calm, strategic presence, Dellacroce projected authority and intelligence, ensuring that both allies and rivals recognized his influence. His interventions, though often subtle, shaped the actions of those around him, demonstrating that authority could be exercised not only through direct orders, but also through reputation, respect, and the careful orchestration of events. The integration of legitimate and illicit enterprises was central to Dellacroce's operational strategy. Business ventures, construction contracts, and union dealings provided both financial stability and a cover for criminal operations. Each component of this network was carefully coordinated to reinforce the others, ensuring profitability while minimizing risk. Associates respected his ability to orchestrate these interwoven operations, recognizing that long-term influence required balancing multiple interests and maintaining operational cohesion. This dual approach enhanced the Gambino family's power and ensured its continued dominance in both legal and criminal spheres. Timing was an essential element of Dellacroce's strategy. In organized crime, acting at precisely the right moment could determine success or failure. Dellacroce's intuition, experience, and keen observation allowed him to identify the optimal moments to negotiate, intervene, or apply force. By controlling timing, he maximized impact, minimized exposure, and maintained organizational stability. Associates understood that his decisions were deliberate and informed, and that patience and observation often held as much value as direct action. This emphasis on timing reinforced both discipline and trust within the organization. Dellacroce's leadership emphasized the human dimension of organized crime. Trust, competence, and loyalty were fundamental to sustaining influence. Associates were aware that discretion, allegiance, and operational proficiency were prerequisites for advancement and continued protection. This focus cultivated a professional, disciplined environment where each member understood their responsibilities, the role in maintaining cohesion, and contribution to the family's strategic goals. Dellacroce's approach ensured that leadership was not only about operational control, but also about shaping culture, fostering loyalty, and mentoring the next generation. Even amid adversity, Dellacroce maintained perspective. Rival incursions, internal disputes, and law enforcement pressure were all approached with calm deliberation, careful evaluation of risks, and precise execution of strategic actions. His steady presence reassured associates, providing a stabilizing force that guided the family through the inherent unpredictability of organized crime. The strength of his leadership lay not in visible domination, but in the quiet, consistent exercise of judgment, foresight, and strategic intelligence. By 1980, Aniello Dellacroce's quiet authority had solidified into one of the most defining influences within the Gambino crime family. His leadership combined operational precision, mentorship, strategic foresight, and the cultivation of loyalty, creating an organization that was adaptable, resilient, and cohesive. While his methods remained understated, the results were unmistakable. Disciplined execution, cohesive operations, and sustained influence over both associates and rivals. Dellacroce demonstrated that enduring authority is rooted in intelligence, foresight, patience, and strategic orchestration rather than public display or impulsive action. Ultimately, Dellacroce's leadership exemplified the power of quiet, deliberate influence. By blending mentorship, strategic planning, calculated enforcement, and a deep understanding of human nature, he maintained control over complex networks, guided the family's long-term trajectory, and ensured the stability of one of New York City's most powerful organized crime families. His legacy during this period demonstrated that discretion, patience, and strategy could achieve lasting power, influence, and respect in an unpredictable and dangerous environment, cementing his role as a pivotal figure in the history of organized crime. By the early 1982s, Aniello Dellacroce had become one of the most formidable figures within the Gambino crime family, a man whose influence extended far beyond the visible operations of organized crime. Dellacroce's authority was exercised quietly, but decisively, shaping the family's strategy, internal cohesion, and external relationships without the need for flamboyant displays or public recognition. In a world defined by volatility, ambition, and constant scrutiny from law enforcement, his ability to maintain stability and control made him an indispensable force within the organization. Dellacroce's operational oversight was extensive. He managed gambling networks, loan sharking operations, union manipulation, and construction contracts with meticulous attention to detail. Each operation was designed to generate maximum profit while maintaining discretion and minimizing risk. Beyond the immediate financial considerations, Dellacroce's strategic coordination ensured that these ventures supported one another, creating a resilient network of influence that reinforced the family's long-term stability. Associates quickly understood that his guidance was not advisory but directive. Adherence to his instructions was essential for survival and advancement. A key aspect of Dellacroce's leadership was his ability to inspire loyalty through respect rather than fear alone. Soldiers, capos, and associates recognized that competence, discretion, and strategic insight were highly valued. By rewarding these qualities and mentoring promising individuals, Dellacroce fostered a network of loyal associates whose commitment was grounded in trust and respect. This cultivated loyalty provided a stabilizing force within the family, preventing internal strife and ensuring that collective objectives remained the guiding focus of all operations. Internal tensions were an inevitable part of life in organized crime. Ambition, rivalry, and personal grievances could threaten to destabilize operations. Dellacroce managed these dynamics with subtlety and strategic foresight. Disputes were diffused before they escalated. Ambitious subordinates were guided toward productive pathways, and potential challenges to authority were addressed with precision. His combination of firmness and diplomacy reinforced his position as a respected leader whose judgment was rarely questioned and whose decisions carried significant weight throughout the family. Mentorship played a central role in Dellacroce's strategy for organizational longevity. He recognized that sustaining the family's influence required a new generation capable of navigating the intricacies of organized crime. Young associates were trained to observe carefully, act strategically, and influence outcomes without relying on impulsive behavior. Dellacroce emphasized that true authority often went unnoticed, expressed through decision-making, relationships, and timing, rather than overt displays of power. By instilling these principles, he ensured that the Gambino family's culture, operational effectiveness, and resilience would endure across decades. Violence, though measured and strategic, remained an essential tool in Dellacroce's arsenal. He understood that the selective application of force could resolve threats, reinforce loyalty, and protect the family's interests. Unlike impulsive figures who relied on intimidation, Dellacroce's interventions were precise, calculated, and impactful. Associates knew that when Dellacroce acted, it was both necessary and deliberate, and that the consequences would be exact and instructive. This approach reinforced discipline, strengthened authority, and ensured that respect for his judgment remained unwavering. During this period, law enforcement pressure was intensifying. Federal agencies were employing sophisticated surveillance techniques, informants, and undercover operations to infiltrate organized crime networks. Dellacroce's foresight allowed him to navigate these challenges effectively. He maintained strict control over communications, layered intermediaries between himself and operatives, and constantly monitored potential vulnerabilities. By proactively managing risk, Dellacroce ensured that the family could operate efficiently while minimizing exposure, demonstrating the critical importance of discretion, planning, and strategic foresight. Perception was a powerful tool in Dellacroce's leadership. Reputation, he understood, could shape behavior, influence decisions, and deter potential adversaries. By maintaining a calm and calculated presence, Dellacroce projected authority and intelligence, reinforcing the idea that his judgment carried weight and that his influence extended beyond direct orders. Rivals, associates, and law enforcement alike recognized the significance of his decisions, demonstrating that subtle, consistent leadership could exert far more control than impulsive or ostentatious displays of power. Integrating legitimate and illicit enterprises was a defining element of Dellacroce's strategic vision. Construction contracts, union arrangements, and business ventures provided both revenue and a layer of legitimacy for the family's operations. Each element of this network was carefully managed to complement the others, maximizing profitability while minimizing risk. Associates respected his ability to coordinate these interwoven ventures, understanding that long-term power required balancing multiple interests, maintaining operational cohesion, and ensuring strategic alignment across all levels of the family's operations. Timing remained critical to Dellacroce's effectiveness. In the world of organized crime, acting at precisely the right moment could mean the difference between success and failure. Dellacroce's intuition, honed by decades of experience, allowed him to identify the optimal moments to negotiate, intervene, or employ force. By controlling timing, he maximized outcomes, minimized risk, and maintained stability throughout the family. Associates learned that his decisions were deliberate, informed by foresight, and rarely arbitrary. This emphasis on timing reinforced discipline, trust, and respect within the organization. Dellacroce's leadership emphasized the human dimension of organized crime. Trust, competence, and loyalty were fundamental to sustaining influence and ensuring long-term organizational resilience. Associates understood that discretion, allegiance, and operational skill were prerequisites for success and advancement. This focus created a disciplined environment in which each member knew their responsibilities, understood their role in preserving cohesion, and recognized the importance of maintaining the family's strategic objectives. Dellacroce's approach ensured that leadership was exercised thoughtfully, blending operational control with mentorship and culture building. Even under the pressure of rival families, law enforcement scrutiny, and internal challenges, Dellacroce maintained perspective. He approached crises with strategic calm, evaluating risks, anticipating consequences, and executing actions with precision. His steady presence reassured associates and provided a stabilizing influence that guided the family through uncertainty and danger. The power of Dellacroce's leadership lay not in overt displays of authority, but in the consistent exercise of judgment, discretion, and foresight, creating a culture of resilience and reliability within the Gambino family. By the early 1982s, Aniello Dellacroce's quiet authority had become one of the defining forces within the Gambino crime family. His leadership combined operational efficiency, mentorship, strategic foresight, and the cultivation of loyalty, resulting in a resilient, disciplined, and cohesive organization. While his methods were understated, the outcomes were unmistakable. Coordinated operations, disciplined execution, and enduring influence over both associates and rivals. Dellacroce demonstrated that real authority is built on intelligence, patience, and strategic orchestration rather than visibility or spectacle. Ultimately, Dellacroce's role exemplified the enduring power of quiet, calculated leadership. By blending mentorship, strategic planning, measured enforcement, and an understanding of human nature, he maintained control over complex networks, guided the family's long-term strategy, and ensured the stability of one of New York City's most powerful organized crime families. His legacy during this period illustrated that discretion, patience, and foresight could achieve lasting power, influence, and respect in an unpredictable and dangerous environment, cementing his place as a pivotal figure in the history of organized crime. By the mid-1982s, the Gambino crime family had cemented itself as one of the most powerful organized crime organizations in New York City. A sprawling network of influence, commerce, and covert operations. At the heart of this empire stood Aniello Dellacroce, a man whose quiet, calculated authority shaped the family in ways far more profound than public headlines or law enforcement attention could reveal. Unlike more ostentatious figures, Dellacroce did not rely on public displays of power. His influence was subtle, strategic, and pervasive, ensuring the family's stability while preparing the next generation of leaders for the challenges ahead. Dellacroce's operational reach was extensive. He oversaw gambling operations, loan sharking networks, construction contracts, and union dealings, orchestrating each with meticulous precision. These ventures were designed to generate maximum profit while maintaining discretion and minimizing risk. He understood that visibility could be dangerous in an era of increasing law enforcement scrutiny and interfamily rivalries. To balance profit with security, Dellacroce ensured that each enterprise complemented the others, creating a network of interdependent operations that reinforced both financial stability and organizational cohesion. Associates quickly realized that under Dellacroce's guidance, every action carried significance, and deviation from his directives could have serious consequences. Loyalty was the cornerstone of Dellacroce's leadership. He built allegiance not through fear alone, but through respect, mentorship, and the careful cultivation of trust. Soldiers, capos, and emerging members recognized that competence, discretion, and strategic thinking were as important as allegiance itself. By rewarding these qualities and providing guidance, Dellacroce fostered a network of associates whose loyalty was grounded in respect rather than coercion. This loyalty provided a stabilizing force within the Gambino family, ensuring cohesion in an environment where ambition, rivalry, and personal interest could otherwise lead to instability. Internal conflicts were inevitable in a criminal organization of this scale. Power struggles, rivalries, and personal grievances could disrupt operations if not carefully managed. Dellacroce's approach combined strategic diplomacy with decisive intervention. Disputes were diffused before escalation. Ambitious subordinates were guided into constructive roles, and potential threats to his authority were neutralized thoughtfully and effectively. This balance of firmness and subtlety reinforced his reputation as a leader whose judgment was trusted and whose influence extended across all levels of the organization. Mentorship was another hallmark of Dellacroce's leadership. He understood that the survival and success of the family depended on cultivating a new generation capable of navigating the high-stakes environment of organized crime. Young associates were taught to observe carefully, exercise patience, and exert influence discreetly rather than through impulsive action. Dellacroce emphasized that real power often went unnoticed, exerted through relationships, decisions, and timing, rather than through overt or aggressive displays. Through this mentorship, he ensured that the family's traditions, operational discipline, and strategic culture would endure even as individual members came and went. Despite his preference for subtlety, Dellacroce recognized the necessity of violence as a tool for maintaining authority. Force was applied judiciously, selectively, and strategically, reserved for situations where it could resolve threats, reinforce loyalty, or protect the family's interests. Unlike impulsive or showy figures, Dellacroce's interventions were deliberate, measured, and precise. Associates understood that when Dellacroce acted, the consequences were exact and purposeful, further consolidating his authority and ensuring respect throughout the family. The era was marked by increased law enforcement pressure, with federal agencies employing advanced surveillance techniques, informants, and undercover operations to dismantle organized crime networks. Dellacroce responded with foresight and planning. He maintained strict control over communications, used multiple layers of intermediaries, and constantly assessed potential vulnerabilities. By anticipating threats before they could materialize, he preserved the family's stability and operational efficiency, demonstrating the critical importance of foresight, discretion, and strategic risk management in the modern underworld. Perception was a crucial element of Dellacroce's power. Reputation alone could influence behavior, deter challenges, and shape alliances. By maintaining a calm, composed, and strategic presence, Dellacroce projected authority and intelligence, ensuring that his influence extended beyond direct orders. Rivals and allies alike recognized the weight of his decisions and the subtle impact of his guidance. Through careful management of perception, Dellacroce reinforced his authority while avoiding unnecessary confrontation, demonstrating that influence in organized crime could be more effectively exerted through respect and reputation than through force alone. Integrating legitimate and illicit operations was central to Dellacroce's strategic vision. Construction projects, labor unions, and business ventures provided both revenue and a veneer of legitimacy, supporting the family's clandestine operations. Each enterprise was carefully coordinated to complement the others, ensuring operational cohesion, financial stability, and strategic alignment. Associates admired Dellacroce's ability to orchestrate such a complex network, recognizing that sustained power required balancing multiple interests, managing interdependencies, and maintaining the family's long-term resilience. Timing remained a defining feature of Dellacroce's leadership. In organized crime, the precise moment to act could determine success or failure. Dellacroce's intuition, honed by decades of experience, allowed him to identify when to negotiate, intervene, or employ force. This mastery of timing enabled him to maximize impact, minimize risk, and maintain stability throughout the family's operations. Associates learned that his decisions were deliberate, informed, and rarely arbitrary, reinforcing the importance of patience, observation, and strategic thinking in sustaining influence. The human element was central to Dellacroce's leadership philosophy. Trust, competence, and loyalty were foundational to maintaining authority. Associates understood that discretion, allegiance, and skill were prerequisites for advancement. This emphasis created a disciplined, professional culture within the family, where each member recognized their responsibilities, role in sustaining cohesion, and contribution to the organization's strategic goals. Dellacroce's approach demonstrated that leadership was not merely about operational control, but also about shaping culture, mentoring successors, and fostering loyalty. Even in the face of adversity, whether from rival families, law enforcement scrutiny, or internal disputes, Dellacroce maintained perspective. Crises were approached with calculated calm, risks were evaluated carefully, and interventions were executed with precision. His steady presence reassured associates, providing a stabilizing influence that guided the family through uncertainty and danger. Dellacroce's strength lay not in visible domination but in the consistent, thoughtful exercise of judgment, foresight, and strategic intelligence. By the mid-1980s, Aniello Dellacroce's quiet authority had become a defining force within the Gambino family. His leadership combined operational precision, mentorship, strategic foresight, and loyalty cultivation, resulting in a disciplined, resilient, and cohesive organization. While understated in method, the outcomes were undeniable. Coordinated operations, disciplined execution, and enduring influence over both associates and rivals. Dellacroce exemplified that true power comes from intelligence, patience, and careful orchestration rather than impulsive action or ostentation. Ultimately, Dellacroce's tenure during this period illustrated the potency of subtle, deliberate leadership. By combining mentorship, foresight, measured enforcement, and an understanding of human behavior, he maintained control over complex operations, shaped the family's strategic direction, and ensured its long-term stability. In a volatile, high-risk environment, his approach demonstrated that discretion, strategic planning, and patient execution could achieve lasting power and influence, cementing his place as one of the most consequential figures in the history of organized crime. By the mid-1980s, the Gambino crime family had solidified its position as one of the most formidable organized crime organizations in New York City, with operations spanning gambling, loan sharking, construction, and union influence. At the center of this intricate web of control and influence was Aniello Dellacroce, a man whose quiet authority and strategic acumen shaped the family's trajectory in ways few outside the inner circle could fully grasp. While some mob figures relied on flamboyance or public displays of power, Dellacroce's influence was exercised subtly through mentorship, foresight, and the careful orchestration of people and operations. Dellacroce's oversight extended across both legitimate and illicit enterprises. Gambling networks, loan sharking operations, and union dealings were coordinated meticulously, generating revenue while maintaining secrecy. Construction contracts and business ventures were strategically integrated, providing stability and a veneer of legitimacy. Each operation was designed to complement the others, creating a resilient network that ensured the Gambino family remained financially and operationally robust. Associates quickly recognized that Dellacroce's directives were not suggestions but essential guidance. Adherence was critical to maintaining position and avoiding risk. Central to Dellacroce's influence was his ability to cultivate loyalty through respect and mentorship rather than fear alone. Soldiers, capos, and emerging associates understood that discretion, intelligence, and competence were as important as allegiance. By mentoring promising individuals and rewarding skillful, discreet behavior, Dellacroce fostered a network of loyal associates whose commitment was grounded in admiration and trust. This cultivated loyalty acted as a stabilizing force, maintaining internal cohesion and ensuring that personal ambitions did not undermine the family's collective objectives. Internal tensions were a constant threat in any high-stakes organization. Power struggles, rivalries, and personal grievances could easily disrupt operations if not managed effectively. Dellacroce approached these challenges with calculated diplomacy and strategic intervention. Disputes were diffused before they escalated. Ambitious subordinates were guided into productive channels, and potential threats to his authority were neutralized thoughtfully. This balance of firmness and subtlety reinforced his reputation as a leader whose judgment was trusted and whose influence permeated all levels of the family. Mentorship remained a cornerstone of Dellacroce's long-term strategy. He understood that the family's continuity relied on training a new generation capable of navigating the intricate dynamics of organized crime. Young associates were taught to observe carefully, exercise patience, and influence situations discreetly rather than through impulsive action. Dellacroce emphasized that true power was often invisible, expressed through strategic decisions, timing, and relationships, rather than through overt aggression. By instilling these principles, he ensured that the family's traditions, operational discipline, and strategic culture would endure, regardless of the rise and fall of individual members. Though subtle, Dellacroce recognized the necessity of violence as a tool for maintaining authority. Force was applied judiciously and strategically, used to resolve threats, enforce discipline, and safeguard the family's interests. Unlike impulsive figures who relied on intimidation or spectacle, Dellacroce's interventions were deliberate and precise. Associates understood that when Dellacroce acted, the consequences were intentional, exacting, and instructive, reinforcing discipline, consolidating authority, and ensuring respect throughout the family. The mid-1980s also brought heightened law enforcement scrutiny. Federal agencies were employing sophisticated surveillance techniques, informants, and undercover operations to dismantle organized crime networks. Dellacroce's strategic foresight allowed him to navigate these pressures effectively. He controlled communications, used multiple layers of intermediaries, and continually assessed vulnerabilities within operations. By anticipating law enforcement actions, he preserved the family's stability and operational effectiveness, demonstrating the critical importance of planning, discretion, and risk management in sustaining long-term influence. Perception was another critical tool in Dellacroce's arsenal. Reputation shaped behavior, influenced decisions, and deterred adversaries. By maintaining a calm, composed, and deliberate presence, Dellacroce projected authority and intelligence, ensuring that his influence extended beyond direct command. Rivals and associates alike recognized the weight of his judgment and the subtle effects of his interventions. Through careful management of perception, he reinforced his authority while minimizing unnecessary confrontation, proving that influence in organized crime could be as much about respect and reputation as about direct action. Integrating legitimate and illicit enterprises was a hallmark of Dellacroce's strategic approach. Construction contracts, union dealings, and business ventures generated both revenue and legitimacy, providing cover for clandestine operations. Each enterprise was carefully coordinated to support the others, ensuring cohesion, financial stability, and strategic alignment. Associates admired his ability to manage these complex, interconnected ventures, understanding that lasting influence required balancing multiple interests, maintaining operational integrity, and sustaining long-term resilience. Timing was a defining factor in Dellacroce's success. In organized crime, acting at precisely the right moment could determine success or failure. Dellacroce's intuition, honed by decades of experience, enabled him to identify when to negotiate, intervene, or use force. By controlling timing, he maximized outcomes, minimized exposure, and preserved stability throughout the family. Associates understood that his decisions were deliberate, informed, and rarely arbitrary. reinforcing the value of patience, observation, and strategic thinking within the organization. The human dimension of leadership was central to Dellacroce's philosophy. Trust, competence, and loyalty were fundamental to sustaining influence and organizational cohesion. Associates understood that discretion, allegiance, and skill were essential for advancement and protection. This focus fostered a disciplined, professional culture where each member knew their responsibilities, role in maintaining cohesion, and contribution to the family's strategic objectives. Dellacroce's leadership blended operational control with mentorship, cultural guidance, and loyalty cultivation, ensuring long-term resilience. Even in the face of adversity, rival families, internal disputes, and law enforcement pressures, Dellacroce maintained perspective. Crises were approached with careful evaluation, calculated action, and strategic calm. His presence provided stability and reassurance, guiding the family through volatile conditions. The strength of his leadership lay not in overt domination but in the consistent application of judgment, foresight, and strategic intelligence, shaping the Gambino family into a disciplined and cohesive organization. By the mid-1980s, Aniello Dellacroce's quiet, deliberate authority had become one of the defining forces within the Gambino crime family. His leadership combined operational oversight, mentorship, strategic foresight, and loyalty cultivation, resulting in a disciplined, adaptable, and resilient organization. While understated, the results were clear: coordinated operations, disciplined execution, and enduring influence over associates and rivals alike. Dellacroce exemplified that true power stems from intelligence, patience, and careful orchestration rather than flamboyant action or impulsivity. Ultimately, Dellacroce's leadership during this period illustrated the effectiveness of quiet, calculated influence. By blending mentorship, strategic planning, measured enforcement, and an understanding of human behavior, he maintained control over complex networks, guided the family's long-term direction, and ensured stability in a dangerous and unpredictable environment. His approach demonstrated that discretion, foresight, and strategic execution could secure lasting power and respect, solidifying his position as one of the most consequential figures in the history of organized crime. By the late 1980s, the Gambino crime family had firmly entrenched itself as one of the most powerful and influential organized crime organizations in New York City. Its operations spanned illegal gambling, loan sharking, extortion, construction, and union control, creating a vast network of influence and profit. At the core of this empire stood Aniello Dellacroce, a man whose quiet but decisive authority shaped the family's strategy, internal dynamics, and long-term resilience. Unlike many contemporaries who sought public notoriety or displayed authority through dramatic acts of violence, Dellacroce exercised power subtly, relying on strategic foresight, personal influence, and careful orchestration of events. Dellacroce's operational oversight was comprehensive. He supervised gambling networks, loan sharking operations, union activities, and construction contracts, coordinating each element to maximize profit while minimizing exposure. These ventures were designed to interlock, creating a resilient system that maintained both financial stability and operational secrecy. Associates understood that Dellacroce's directives were non-negotiable, and that deviation from his guidance could result in both personal and organizational consequences. This clarity reinforced discipline and ensured that the family's operations remained efficient, cohesive, and adaptable to the unpredictable challenges of the criminal underworld. Loyalty formed the backbone of Dellacroce's leadership. He cultivated allegiance through respect, mentorship, and the careful management of relationships rather than through fear alone. Soldiers, capos, and younger associates recognized that competence, discretion, and strategic thinking were valued alongside allegiance. By mentoring capable individuals and rewarding those who demonstrated skillful, discreet execution of responsibilities, Dellacroce built a network of loyal associates whose commitment was genuine and enduring. This cultivated loyalty provided stability within the family, preventing internal conflict from undermining collective objectives or operational efficiency. Internal tension, however, remained an ever-present challenge. Power struggles, personal rivalries, and disputes over territory or revenue could easily destabilize the organization. Dellacroce addressed these challenges with a combination of diplomacy, strategic intervention, and careful management of relationships. Disputes were diffused before they escalated, ambitious subordinates were guided into constructive roles, and potential threats to his authority were neutralized in a manner that preserved both respect and operational continuity. This balance of firmness and subtlety solidified Dellacroce's reputation as a leader whose judgment was trusted and whose influence extended throughout the family hierarchy. Mentorship was a defining feature of Dellacroce's approach. He recognized that the long-term success of the family depended on preparing a new generation of leaders capable of navigating complex criminal dynamics. Young associates were trained to observe, exercise patience, and exert influence subtly rather than through impulsive action. Dellacroce emphasized that true authority often went unseen, expressed through strategic decisions, relationships, and precise timing rather than overt aggression. By instilling these principles, he ensured the continuation of the family's traditions, operational discipline, and strategic culture, regardless of the rise or fall of individual members. Although Dellacroce preferred subtlety, he fully understood the necessity of force in maintaining authority. Violence was used judiciously and strategically, applied to resolve threats, enforce discipline, and protect the family's interests. Unlike impulsive figures who relied on intimidation or spectacle, Dellacroce's interventions were calculated, purposeful, and precise. Associates understood that when Dellacroce acted, the consequences would be exact, instructive, and designed to reinforce loyalty and organizational cohesion. This strategic approach to force strengthened his authority and ensured enduring respect throughout the family. The late 1982 also brought heightened scrutiny from law enforcement. Federal agencies increasingly relied on surveillance, informants, and undercover operations to infiltrate organized crime networks. Dellacroce responded with foresight, maintaining strict control over communications, layering intermediaries between himself and operatives, and continuously monitoring potential vulnerabilities. By anticipating legal threats before they materialized, he preserved operational stability, demonstrating the critical importance of discretion, planning, and proactive risk management in sustaining influence and minimizing exposure. Perception was a central tool in Dellacroce's leadership. Reputation influenced behavior, shaped decisions, and deterred potential adversaries. By maintaining a calm, composed, and strategic presence, Dellacroce projected authority and intelligence, ensuring that his influence extended beyond direct orders. Rivals and associates recognized the weight of his judgment and the subtle consequences of his actions. Through careful management of perception, Dellacroce reinforced his authority while minimizing unnecessary confrontation, proving that effective influence in organized crime relied as much on respect and reputation as on the actual use of force. Integrating legitimate and illicit enterprises was a defining feature of Dellacroce's strategy. Construction contracts, union control, and business ventures provided revenue streams, legitimacy, and cover for clandestine operations. Each enterprise was carefully coordinated to support the others, ensuring operational cohesion, financial stability, and strategic alignment. Associates admired Dellacroce's capacity to orchestrate such complex networks, understanding that lasting influence required balancing multiple interests, managing interdependencies, and maintaining long-term resilience. Timing remained one of Dellacroce's most critical assets. In organized crime, acting at precisely the right moment could determine the difference between success and failure. Dellacroce's intuition, honed through decades of experience, enabled him to identify when to negotiate, intervene, or employ force. By controlling timing, he maximized outcomes, minimized exposure, and maintained stability across the family's operations. Associates quickly learned that his decisions were deliberate, informed, and rarely arbitrary, reinforcing the value of patience, observation, and strategic thinking within the organization. The human element of leadership was central to Dellacroce's philosophy. Trust, competence, and loyalty were the foundations of his influence. Associates understood that discretion, allegiance, and operational skill were prerequisites for advancement and continued protection. This emphasis fostered a disciplined, professional culture within the family, where each member recognized their responsibilities, role in sustaining cohesion, and contribution to strategic goals. Dellacroce's leadership blended operational control with mentorship, cultural guidance, and loyalty cultivation, ensuring long-term organizational resilience. Even under the pressures of rival families, law enforcement scrutiny, and internal disputes, Dellacroce maintained perspective. He approached crises with careful evaluation, calculated action, and strategic calm. His presence provided reassurance and stability, guiding the family through volatile and unpredictable circumstances. The strength of Dellacroce's leadership lay not in visible domination, but in the consistent application of judgment, foresight, and strategic intelligence, creating a disciplined, cohesive, and resilient organization capable of enduring both internal and external challenges. By the late 1980s, Aniello Dellacroce's quiet authority had become one of the defining forces within the Gambino crime family. His leadership combined operational precision, mentorship, strategic foresight, and loyalty cultivation, resulting in a disciplined, adaptable, and cohesive organization. While his methods remained understated, the outcomes were unmistakable. Coordinated operations, disciplined execution, and enduring influence over associates and rivals alike. Dellacroce demonstrated that true authority comes from intelligence, patience, and careful orchestration, rather than impulsive action or public spectacle. Ultimately, Dellacroce's leadership during this period illustrated the enduring power of subtle, calculated influence. By blending mentorship, strategic planning, measured enforcement, and an understanding of human behavior, he maintained control over complex networks, guided the family's long-term direction, and ensured stability in a high-risk and unpredictable environment. His approach demonstrated that discretion, foresight, and strategic execution could secure lasting power, influence, and respect, solidifying his role as one of the most consequential figures in the history of organized crime. By the closing years of the 1980s, Aniello Dellacroce had become a figure whose influence extended far beyond the day-to-day operations of the Gambino crime family. His authority was not born of spectacle or public notoriety, but of a deeply ingrained understanding of strategy, human behavior, and the mechanics of organized crime. Within the family, Dellacroce was both a stabilizing force and a guide, shaping decisions, mentoring rising members, and orchestrating operations with precision. His presence ensured that the family remained cohesive, resilient, and strategically aligned in an era defined by volatility and heightened law enforcement scrutiny. Dellacroce's operational oversight spanned multiple layers of activity, from gambling operations and loan sharking networks to union influence and construction contracts. Each enterprise was meticulously coordinated to generate revenue while minimizing exposure. He understood that visibility was a risk, and his strategies consistently emphasized discretion, foresight, and calculated intervention. Associates quickly recognized that Dellacroce's guidance was essential, and the deviation from his directives could jeopardize both personal standing and organizational stability. This clarity reinforced discipline, loyalty, and operational cohesion across the family's structure. Loyalty, cultivated through respect rather than fear alone, was a hallmark of Dellacroce's leadership. Soldiers, capos, and emerging members of the family were aware that competence, discretion, and strategic insight were highly valued. Dellacroce nurtured these qualities through mentorship, instruction, and example, creating a network of associates whose allegiance was grounded in trust and admiration. This cultivated loyalty acted as a stabilizing force, ensuring that internal rivalries, personal ambition, or external pressures did not disrupt the organization's cohesion or long-term objectives. Internal disputes were an unavoidable aspect of organized crime. Power struggles, personal rivalries, and disputes over revenue or territory could threaten the family's operational integrity. Dellacroce managed these tensions with a combination of strategic intervention, diplomacy, and subtle guidance. Conflicts were diffused before they escalated. Ambitious subordinates were directed toward constructive paths, and potential threats to authority were neutralized, without undermining morale. This delicate balance of firmness and discretion reinforced his reputation as a leader whose judgment was trusted and whose influence permeated every level of the organization. Mentorship was central to Dellacroce's vision for the family's longevity. He understood that the future of the Gambino crime family depended on cultivating a new generation capable of navigating its complex internal and external dynamics. Young associates were trained to observe carefully, exercise patience, and influence outcomes subtly rather than through impulsive behavior. Dellacroce stressed that true power often remained unseen, exercised through strategic decision-making, timing, and relationships, rather than through overt displays of dominance. This mentorship ensured that the family's culture, operational discipline, and strategic vision would endure beyond the tenure of any single individual. While Dellacroce preferred subtlety in leadership, he fully recognized the necessity of force. Violence was employed strategically, designed to resolve threats, enforce discipline, and safeguard the family's interests. Unlike impulsive or ostentatious figures, Dellacroce's actions were deliberate and precise, calculated to reinforce authority and loyalty. Associates understood that when he exercised this power, the consequences were exact, intentional, and instructive, reinforcing both respect for his judgment and the discipline required to maintain organizational stability. The late 1980 seconds also brought increasing scrutiny from federal authorities. Law enforcement relied on sophisticated surveillance, informants, and undercover operations to dismantle organized crime networks. Dellacroce responded with foresight and careful planning, maintaining strict control over communications, layering intermediaries between himself and operatives, and continuously monitoring potential vulnerabilities. By anticipating threats before they could materialize, he preserved the family's operational effectiveness and stability, demonstrating the essential importance of discretion, planning, and proactive risk management in maintaining influence. Perception was another tool in Dellacroce's arsenal. Reputation influenced decisions, guided behavior, and deterred potential adversaries. By maintaining a composed, strategic presence, Dellacroce projected authority and intelligence, extending his influence beyond direct orders. Rivals, allies, and associates recognized the significance of his judgment and the subtle consequences of his actions. Through careful management of perception, Dellacroce reinforced his authority while minimizing unnecessary confrontation, demonstrating that respect and reputation were as powerful as force in the maintenance of influence. The integration of legitimate and illicit enterprises was a defining element of Dellacroce's strategy. Construction projects, labor union manipulation, and business ventures generated revenue, legitimacy, and cover for clandestine operations. Each enterprise was coordinated to complement the others, ensuring cohesion, financial stability, and strategic alignment. Associates admired Dellacroce's ability to orchestrate these interconnected operations, understanding that enduring influence required balancing multiple interests, managing interdependencies, and maintaining organizational resilience over the long term. Timing remained a critical element of Dellacroce's leadership. In organized crime, acting at precisely the right moment could determine success or failure. Dellacroce's intuition, honed over decades, allowed him to identify optimal opportunities to negotiate, intervene, or employ force. This mastery of timing enabled him to maximize impact, minimize exposure, and preserve stability across the family's operations. Associates understood that his decisions were deliberate, informed, and rarely arbitrary, reinforcing the value of observation, patience, and strategic thought in sustaining influence. The human dimension was central to Dellacroce's philosophy. Trust, competence, and loyalty were foundational to his authority. Associates understood that discretion, allegiance, and operational skill were essential for advancement and protection. This emphasis fostered a disciplined, professional culture within the family, where each member understood their responsibilities, role in maintaining cohesion, and contribution to broader strategic objectives. Dellacroce's leadership blended operational control with mentorship, cultural guidance, and loyalty cultivation, ensuring the family's long-term resilience. Even under the pressure of rival families, law enforcement scrutiny, and internal conflict, Dellacroce maintained perspective. Crises were approached with careful evaluation, strategic calm, and calculated action. His presence reassured associates, providing stability and guidance in an unpredictable environment. The strength of his leadership lay not in overt domination, but in the consistent application of judgment, foresight, and strategic intelligence, shaping the Gambino family into a disciplined and cohesive organization, capable of enduring internal and external challenges. By the end of the 1980 seconds, Aniello Dellacroce's quiet, calculated authority had become one of the defining forces within the Gambino crime family. His leadership combined operational precision, mentorship, strategic foresight, and loyalty cultivation, resulting in a disciplined, adaptable, and resilient organization. While understated, the outcomes were undeniable. Coordinated operations, disciplined execution, and enduring influence over both associates and rivals. Dellacroce demonstrated that enduring power comes from intelligence, patience, and strategic orchestration rather than public display or impulsive action. Ultimately, Dellacroce's influence during this period exemplified the potency of quiet, deliberate leadership. By blending mentorship, strategic planning, measured enforcement, and a deep understanding of human behavior, he maintained control over complex operations, guided the family's long-term strategy, and ensured stability in a high-risk environment. His approach demonstrated that discretion, foresight, and patient execution could secure lasting influence and respect, solidifying his position as one of the most consequential figures in the history of organized crime. By the dawn of the 1992, the Gambino crime family had reached a level of influence and operational sophistication that few outside the organization could comprehend. Its power was not merely rooted in the financial success of gambling, loan sharking, and extortion, but in its ability to adapt, survive, and maintain cohesion under constant pressure from rival families and law enforcement. At the heart of this intricate network stood Aniello Dellacroce, a man whose quiet authority and strategic foresight defined the family's resilience. Unlike ostentatious figures who relied on intimidation or spectacle, Dellacroce exercised power subtly through calculated influence, careful mentorship, and precise operational management. Dellacroce's oversight extended to every critical facet of the family's operations. Gambling networks, construction contracts, loan sharking schemes, and union manipulations were coordinated with meticulous precision, ensuring maximum profitability while minimizing exposure. He understood that excessive visibility could invite law enforcement attention or provoke rival families, and he structured operations accordingly. Each enterprise complemented the others, creating a network of interdependent activities that reinforced both the financial and organizational stability of the family. Associates understood that Dellacroce's guidance was indispensable, and that deviation from his directives could jeopardize both personal and organizational security. A key element of Dellacroce's leadership was the cultivation of loyalty through respect rather than fear alone. Soldiers, capos, and younger associates recognized that competence, discretion, and strategic insight were valued as highly as blind allegiance. By mentoring promising individuals and rewarding those who demonstrated skillful, careful execution of responsibilities, Dellacroce built a network of loyal associates whose commitment was genuine and enduring. This cultivated loyalty acted as a stabilizing force within the family, preventing internal rivalries or personal ambition from undermining collective objectives or operational efficiency. Internal conflicts were inevitable in an organization as complex as the Gambino family. Power struggles, territorial disputes, and personal rivalries threatened to disrupt operations. Dellacroce managed these tensions with strategic foresight, measured intervention, and careful negotiation. Disputes were diffused before they escalated. Ambitious subordinates were guided into constructive roles, and potential threats to authority were neutralized with subtlety and precision. This balance of firmness and discretion reinforced Dellacroce's reputation as a leader whose judgment was trusted and whose influence extended throughout the family hierarchy. Mentorship remained central to Dellacroce's vision. He understood that the family's longevity depended on cultivating a new generation of leaders capable of navigating both internal and external challenges. Young associates were trained to observe, exercise patience, and influence outcomes through subtlety rather than impulsivity. Dellacroce emphasized that true authority often went unseen, exercised through careful decisions, strategic timing, and the cultivation of relationships rather than through overt displays of dominance. By instilling these principles, he ensured that the family's operational culture, discipline, and strategic approach would endure across decades, regardless of the rise or fall of individual members. Though Dellacroce preferred subtle leadership, he fully recognized the necessity of force. Violence was a tool to be employed strategically, reserved for situations that required it to resolve threats, enforce discipline, or safeguard organizational interests. Unlike impulsive or ostentatious figures, Dellacroce's actions were deliberate, precise, and purposeful. Associates understood that when Dellacroce intervened with force, The consequences were exact and instructive, reinforcing both respect and operational discipline. This judicious application of violence strengthened his authority and ensured loyalty throughout the family. Law enforcement scrutiny intensified during this era. Federal agencies employed sophisticated surveillance, informants, and undercover operations to dismantle organized crime networks. Dellacroce responded with strategic foresight, maintaining strict control over communications, utilizing intermediaries, and continuously monitoring vulnerabilities within the family's operations. By anticipating threats before they materialized, he preserved both operational continuity and organizational stability, demonstrating the importance of discretion, proactive planning, and calculated risk management in sustaining influence. Perception was another critical element of Dellacroce's leadership. Reputation shaped behavior, guided decisions, and deterred potential adversaries. By maintaining a composed, deliberate, and strategic presence, Dellacroce projected authority and intelligence, ensuring his influence extended beyond direct orders. Rivals, allies, and associates alike recognized the significance of his judgment and the subtle but impactful consequences of his decisions. Through careful management of perception, Dellacroce reinforced his authority while minimizing unnecessary confrontation, proving that respect and reputation were often more powerful than raw force in maintaining control. The integration of legitimate and illicit enterprises was central to Dellacroce's strategy. Construction projects, union involvement, and business ventures generated revenue, legitimacy, and cover for clandestine operations. Each component was coordinated to complement the others, ensuring operational cohesion, financial stability, and strategic alignment. Associates admired Dellacroce's ability to orchestrate this complex web of activities, understanding that sustained influence required balancing multiple interests, managing interdependencies, and maintaining organizational resilience over the long term. Timing continued to be a defining feature of Dellacroce's approach. In organized crime, acting at precisely the right moment could determine success or failure. Dellacroce's intuition, honed by decades of experience, enabled him to identify optimal moments to negotiate, intervene, or employ force. By controlling timing, he maximized outcomes, minimized exposure, and preserved stability across the family's operations. Associates quickly learned that his decisions were deliberate, informed, and rarely arbitrary, emphasizing the value of patience, observation, and strategic thinking within the organization. The human element remained central to Dellacroce's philosophy. Trust, competence, and loyalty were foundational to sustaining influence. Associates understood that discretion, allegiance, and operational skill were prerequisites for advancement and protection. This focus cultivated a disciplined, professional culture, where each member understood their responsibilities, their role in maintaining cohesion, and their contribution to the family's strategic objectives. Dellacroce's leadership blended operational oversight with mentorship, cultural guidance, and loyalty cultivation, ensuring long-term resilience. Even under the pressures of rival families, law enforcement scrutiny, and internal conflicts, Dellacroce maintained perspective. Crises were approached with careful evaluation, strategic calm, and deliberate action. His presence provided reassurance and stability, guiding the family through unpredictable conditions. The strength of his leadership lay not in overt displays of power, but in the consistent exercise of judgment, foresight, and strategic intelligence, shaping the Gambino family into a disciplined and cohesive organization, capable of enduring internal and external challenges. By the early 1992s, Aniello Dellacroce's quiet, deliberate authority had become a defining force within the Gambino crime family. His leadership combined operational precision, mentorship, strategic foresight, and loyalty cultivation, resulting in a disciplined, adaptable, and resilient organization. While understated, the results were clear. Coordinated operations, disciplined execution, and enduring influence over both associates and rivals. Dellacroce demonstrated that true authority was rooted in intelligence, patience, and strategic orchestration rather than impulsive action or ostentation. Ultimately, Dellacroce's leadership during this period exemplified the enduring potency of subtle, calculated influence. By blending mentorship, strategic planning, measured enforcement, and a deep understanding of human behavior, He maintained control over complex networks, guided the family's long-term strategy, and ensured stability in a volatile environment. His approach proved that discretion, foresight, and patient execution could secure lasting power, influence, and respect, solidifying his position as one of the most consequential figures in the history of organized crime. By the early 1990s, the Gambino crime family had solidified its position as one of New York City's most formidable organized crime organizations. Its influence extended across gambling, loan sharking, construction, union control, and an array of clandestine operations that generated immense revenue and maintained a pervasive grip on both legitimate and illicit industries. Central to the family's strength was Aniello Dellacroce, whose quiet, strategic authority shaped not only the operations of the organization but the very culture of discipline, loyalty, and resilience that defined it. Unlike more flamboyant figures in organized crime, Dellacroce wielded power subtly, ensuring that influence was exercised with precision, foresight, and control rather than spectacle or impulsive aggression. Dellacroce's operational oversight remained extensive and meticulous. Gambling operations, loan sharking networks, construction contracts, and union dealings were orchestrated to maximize profitability while minimizing exposure. Each enterprise was integrated into a broader network, creating an interdependent system of influence and revenue that reinforced organizational stability. Associates understood that Dellacroce's directives were essential and non-negotiable, and failure to adhere to them could have severe consequences. His guidance ensured that operations remained disciplined, cohesive, and capable of adapting to shifting circumstances, whether from internal pressures or external threats. Loyalty was the cornerstone of Dellacroce's leadership. He cultivated allegiance not through fear alone, but through respect, mentorship, and consistent demonstration of competence and strategic insight. Soldiers, capos, and younger associates quickly recognized that discretion, intelligence, and operational skill were valued alongside loyalty. By nurturing these qualities and mentoring promising individuals, Dellacroce created a network of devoted associates whose commitment was grounded in trust and admiration rather than coercion. This cultivated loyalty acted as a stabilizing force within the family, ensuring that ambition, rivalry, or personal grievances did not undermine collective objectives. Internal tensions, however, remained a constant challenge. Power struggles, rivalries, and disputes over territory or profits were ever-present threats to cohesion. Dellacroce approached these issues with careful strategic intervention. Disputes were resolved before escalation, ambitious subordinates were guided toward constructive opportunities, and potential challenges to authority were addressed with calculated precision. This combination of firmness and subtle diplomacy reinforced Dellacroce's reputation as a leader whose judgment was respected and whose influence permeated every level of the organization. Mentorship continued to define Dellacroce's long-term vision. He understood that the survival of the family depended on training a new generation of leaders, capable of navigating the complex interplay of internal dynamics and external threats. Young associates were instructed to observe carefully, act with patience, and exert influence discreetly rather than impulsively. Dellacroce emphasized that true authority often went unseen, exercised through strategic decisions, careful timing, and cultivated relationships. Through this mentorship, he ensured that the family's traditions, operational discipline, and strategic culture would endure across generations. Violence remained a tool of last resort, but was applied strategically. Dellacroce understood that force could be necessary to resolve threats, enforce discipline, or protect organizational interests. Unlike impulsive or ostentatious figures, Dellacroce's actions were deliberate and precise, reinforcing authority and loyalty. Associates were well aware that when Dellacroce intervened with force, the consequences were exact, purposeful, and instructive. This disciplined approach to enforcement reinforced internal order and ensured that respect for his judgment remained unwavering. Law enforcement scrutiny had intensified by the early 1990s. Federal agencies increasingly relied on surveillance, informants, and undercover operations to infiltrate organized crime networks. Dellacroce responded with strategic foresight, implementing strict control over communications, layering intermediaries between himself and operational activities, and continuously assessing potential vulnerabilities. By anticipating law enforcement threats, He preserved operational continuity and stability, demonstrating the critical importance of discretion, planning, and proactive risk management in sustaining influence and minimizing exposure. Perception was a powerful tool in Dellacroce's leadership. Reputation shaped behavior, influenced decisions, and deterred potential adversaries. By maintaining a calm, composed, and strategic presence, Dellacroce projected authority and intelligence, ensuring that his influence extended beyond direct orders. Rivals, associates, and law enforcement recognized the weight of his judgment and the subtle consequences of his actions. By managing perception carefully, Dellacroce reinforced his authority while avoiding unnecessary conflict, showing that respect and reputation could be as effective as force in maintaining influence. The integration of legitimate and illicit operations was central to Dellacroce's approach. Construction projects, union involvement, and business ventures generated revenue, legitimacy, and operational cover. Each component was orchestrated to complement the others, ensuring cohesion, financial stability, and strategic alignment. Associates admired Dellacroce's ability to manage these complex interconnections, recognizing that enduring power required balancing multiple interests, managing interdependencies, and maintaining long-term resilience. Timing continued to be a defining factor in Dellacroce's effectiveness. In organized crime, acting at precisely the right moment could determine success or failure. Dellacroce's intuition, refined over decades, allowed him to identify the optimal moments to negotiate, intervene, or apply force. By controlling timing, he maximized outcomes, minimized exposure, and preserved stability across the family's operations. Associates quickly learned that his decisions were deliberate, informed, and rarely arbitrary, reinforcing the importance of observation, patience, and strategic calculation in maintaining influence. The human element remained central to Dellacroce's leadership philosophy. Trust, competence, and loyalty were the foundations of his authority. Associates understood that discretion, allegiance, and operational skill were prerequisites for advancement and protection. This emphasis fostered a disciplined, professional culture within the family, where each member recognized their responsibilities, their role in maintaining cohesion, and their contribution to strategic objectives. Dellacroce's leadership combined operational oversight with mentorship, cultural guidance, and loyalty cultivation, ensuring long-term organizational resilience. Even under the pressures of rival families, law enforcement scrutiny, and internal conflict, Dellacroce maintained perspective. Crises were approached with careful evaluation, strategic calm, and deliberate action. His presence provided stability and guidance, allowing the family to navigate volatile conditions. The strength of his leadership lay not in overt displays of power, but in the consistent exercise of judgment, foresight, and strategic intelligence, shaping the Gambino family into a disciplined, cohesive, and resilient organization, capable of enduring both internal and external challenges. By the early 1990s, Aniello Dellacroce's quiet, deliberate authority had become one of the defining forces within the Gambino crime family. His leadership combined operational precision, mentorship, strategic foresight, and loyalty cultivation, resulting in a disciplined, adaptable, and resilient organization. While understated, the outcomes were unmistakable. Coordinated operations, disciplined execution, and enduring influence over both associates and rivals. Dellacroce demonstrated that true power comes from intelligence, patience, and strategic orchestration, rather than impulsive action or ostentation. Ultimately, Dellacroce's leadership during this period illustrated the potency of quiet, calculated influence. By blending mentorship, strategic planning, measured enforcement, and a deep understanding of human behavior, he maintained control over complex networks, guided the family's long-term strategy, and ensured stability in a volatile and high-risk environment. His approach demonstrated that discretion, foresight, and patient execution could secure lasting power, influence, and respect, solidifying his position as one of the most consequential figures in the history of organized crime. By the mid-1990s, the Gambino crime family had firmly entrenched itself as one of the most powerful and influential organized crime organizations in New York City. Its reach extended into gambling, loan sharking, construction, union influence, and an array of clandestine operations that generated vast revenue while consolidating authority across both legitimate and illicit industries. At the heart of this empire was Aniello Dellacroce, a man whose quiet, strategic authority shaped the family's culture, operations, and long-term resilience. Unlike more flamboyant or ostentatious figures in organized crime, Dellacroce wielded his influence with subtlety, precision, and a profound understanding of both human behavior and organizational dynamics. Dellacroce's operational oversight remained unmatched. He managed gambling networks, loan sharking schemes, construction contracts, and union manipulations with meticulous care, ensuring that every operation complemented the others to maximize profit while minimizing exposure. Associates quickly realized that his directives were essential, and failure to adhere to his guidance could have serious consequences. Each venture was interconnected, forming a cohesive system that reinforced both financial stability and operational security. This comprehensive approach allowed the Gambino family to remain resilient despite the constant pressures of rival families, internal disputes, and law enforcement scrutiny. A defining feature of Dellacroce's leadership was his ability to cultivate loyalty through respect, mentorship, and strategic influence. Soldiers, capos, and emerging associates understood that competence, discretion, and intelligence were as valuable as allegiance. By mentoring capable individuals and rewarding those who demonstrated skillful execution and discretion, Dellacroce built a network of loyal associates whose commitment was genuine, enduring, and grounded in admiration. This cultivated loyalty served as a stabilizing force, ensuring that ambition or personal grievances did not undermine the family's collective objectives. Internal conflicts were inevitable in an organization of this scale. Power struggles, rivalries, and disputes over territory or profits could threaten cohesion. Dellacroce addressed these issues with careful strategic intervention. Conflicts were diffused before escalation, ambitious subordinates were guided toward productive roles, and potential challenges to authority were neutralized discreetly and effectively. This balance of firmness and diplomacy reinforced his reputation as a leader whose judgment was trusted and whose influence extended throughout every layer of the family's hierarchy. Mentorship was central to Dellacroce's vision for the family's future. He understood that the survival and success of the Gambino family relied on cultivating a new generation capable of navigating complex internal and external dynamics. Young associates were instructed to observe, act with patience, and influence outcomes through subtlety rather than impulsiveness. Dellacroce emphasized that true power often went unseen, expressed through careful decision-making, precise timing, and the cultivation of relationships. Through this mentorship, he ensured that the family's traditions, operational discipline, and strategic culture would endure across generations, regardless of the rise or fall of individual members. Though Dellacroce preferred subtle leadership, he fully recognized the necessity of force. Violence was employed strategically, reserved for situations requiring it to resolve threats, enforce discipline, or protect organizational interests. Unlike impulsive or flamboyant figures, Dellacroce's actions were deliberate, calculated, and precise. Associates understood that when Dellacroce intervened with force, the consequences were exact, instructive, and purposeful, reinforcing both loyalty and operational discipline. This judicious application of violence strengthened his authority and ensured enduring respect throughout the family. Law enforcement scrutiny intensified during this era. Federal agencies increasingly relied on surveillance, informants, and undercover operations to penetrate organized crime networks. Dellacroce responded with foresight, maintaining strict control over communications, employing multiple layers of intermediaries, and continuously assessing potential vulnerabilities. By anticipating threats before they materialized, he preserved operational stability and ensured that the family's activities could continue with minimal disruption. His approach demonstrated the critical importance of discretion, proactive planning, and strategic risk management in sustaining influence and protecting the organization. Perception remained a central aspect of Dellacroce's leadership. Reputation shaped behavior, influenced decisions, and deterred potential adversaries. By maintaining a composed, strategic presence, Dellacroce projected authority and intelligence, ensuring that his influence extended beyond direct orders. Rivals, associates, and even law enforcement recognized the significance of his judgment and the subtle but profound consequences of his decisions. Through careful management of perception, Dellacroce reinforced his authority while avoiding unnecessary confrontation, demonstrating that respect and reputation could rival force as tools of power. The integration of legitimate and illicit enterprises was a hallmark of Dellacroce's approach. Construction projects, union involvement, and business ventures generated both revenue and legitimacy, providing cover for clandestine operations. Each component was orchestrated to complement the others, ensuring cohesion, financial stability, and strategic alignment. Associates admired Dellacroce's ability to manage these interconnected operations, understanding that lasting influence required balancing multiple interests, managing interdependencies, and maintaining organizational resilience over the long term. Timing was an essential aspect of Dellacroce's strategic vision. In organized crime, acting at the precise moment could determine the difference between success and failure. Dellacroce's intuition, sharpened over decades of experience, enabled him to identify optimal opportunities for negotiation, intervention, or force. By controlling timing, he maximized outcomes, minimized risk, and preserved stability across the family's operations. Associates quickly learned that his decisions were deliberate, informed, and rarely arbitrary, emphasizing the value of observation, patience, and strategic thinking in sustaining influence. The human element remained central to Dellacroce's philosophy. Trust, competence, and loyalty were foundational to his authority. Associates understood that discretion, allegiance, and operational skill were prerequisites for advancement and protection. This focus fostered a disciplined, professional culture within the family, where each member understood their responsibilities, their role in maintaining cohesion, and their contribution to broader strategic objectives. Dellacroce's leadership blended operational oversight with mentorship, cultural guidance, and loyalty cultivation, ensuring long-term organizational resilience. Even under the pressures of rival families, law enforcement scrutiny, and internal challenges, Dellacroce maintained perspective. Crises were approached with careful evaluation, strategic calm, and deliberate action. His presence provided stability, reassurance, and guidance, allowing the family to navigate unpredictable and volatile conditions. The strength of his leadership lay not in visible domination but in the consistent exercise of judgment, foresight, and strategic intelligence, shaping the Gambino family into a disciplined, cohesive, and resilient organization capable of enduring internal and external pressures. By the mid-1990s, Aniello Dellacroce's quiet, deliberate authority had become one of the defining forces within the Gambino crime family. His leadership combined operational precision, mentorship, strategic foresight, and loyalty cultivation, resulting in a disciplined, adaptable, and cohesive organization. While understated, the results were unmistakable. Coordinated operations, disciplined execution, and enduring influence over both associates and rivals. Dellacroce demonstrated that true power stems from intelligence, patience, and strategic orchestration rather than impulsive action, flamboyance, or intimidation. Ultimately, Dellacroce's influence during this period illustrated the enduring potency of quiet, calculated leadership. By blending mentorship, strategic planning, measured enforcement, and an understanding of human behavior, he maintained control over complex operations, guided the family's long-term strategy, and ensured stability in a high-risk environment. His approach demonstrated that discretion, foresight, and patient execution could secure lasting power, influence, and respect, solidifying his legacy as one of the most consequential figures in the history of organized crime. The Gambino family, under Dellacroce's guidance, emerged not only as a criminal empire, but as a testament to the strategic power of quiet authority exercised with intelligence, foresight, and discipline.